Chapter 1. Wrong Side of Paradise. Avery Quinn checked her reflection one last time in the restaurant's bathroom mirror. The black dress she'd bought with her last $50 hugged her curves perfectly. Tonight was supposed to fix everything. Brandon had been distant lately, stressed about his new job, he said. Tonight would remind him why they belonged together. She walked back to their table, heels clicking against the marble floor of Meridian, the fanciest restaurant in downtown Chicago. Brandon sat stiff-backed, his jaw set in that way that meant trouble. But she pushed the worry down. They'd been together for 3 years. He'd supported her through college, and she'd supported him through everything else. This was just another rough patch. "You look nervous," she said, sliding into her seat. "The food here can't be that bad." Brandon didn't smile. He didn't even look at her. "We need to talk." His voice was flat, businesslike, the same tone he used with telemarketers. Avery's stomach dropped. "Okay?" "I'm seeing someone else." The words hit her like ice water. Around them, other couples laughed and clinked glasses. The world kept spinning while hers stopped. "What?" She barely whispered it. "Tiffany Walsh. You wouldn't know her. Her father owns Walsh Construction." He straightened his tie. The red one she'd given him for Christmas. "We're serious." Avery stared at him. This had to be a joke. A terrible, cruel joke. "Brandon, what are you talking about? We live together. We have plans. The apartment. I moved out this morning. My stuff's already gone." She felt like she was drowning. "Why?" For the first time, he looked directly at her. His eyes were cold, calculating. "Because she can give me things you can't." "Like what?" "A future. Connections. Her father's already talking about bringing me into the family business." He leaned back in his chair. "You were always going to hold me back, Avery. We both knew it." The cruelty in his voice was worse than the words. This wasn't the man who'd held her when her father died. This wasn't the man who'd promised they'd build something together. "I loved you," she whispered. "I know." He pulled out his wallet and dropped a 20 on the table. "That's for your cab." He stood to leave, then paused. "Oh, and I transferred the money from our joint account. You'll need to close it." He shrugged. "Consider it payment for the past 3 years." Her hands shook. "That's my money too, my savings, my—" "Good luck, Avery. You'll figure it out. You always do." He walked away, leaving her sitting alone in a restaurant she couldn't afford, wearing a dress she'd bought to save a relationship that was already dead. She sat there for 10 minutes, 20, watching couples around her share dessert and hold hands. The waitress kept glancing over, clearly wondering if she should approach. Finally, she stood on unsteady legs and walked to the bathroom. Her phone buzzed. For a second, hope flared. Maybe Brandon had come to his senses, but it was an unknown number. "Hello? Is this Avery Quinn?" The voice was professional, tired. "Yes?" "This is Dr. Martinez from Chicago General. I'm calling about your mother, Linda Quinn. She was brought in by ambulance about an hour ago." The bathroom tilted. Avery gripped the marble counter. "What happened?" "She collapsed at work. We're running tests, but it appears she's had a stroke. You need to get here as soon as possible." The line went dead. Avery stared at her reflection. Mascara streaked down her cheeks. Her carefully styled hair was falling apart. 3 hours ago, she had a boyfriend, a home, savings, and a future. Now she had nothing except a mother fighting for her life. She walked out of the restaurant without looking back. The cab ride to the hospital cost $18. She had $12 left in her wallet and whatever was in her checking account, which, if Brandon was telling the truth, was nothing. Chicago General's fluorescent lights made everything look sickly. The ICU smelled like disinfectant and fear. Her mother lay unconscious, tubes and wires connecting her to machines that beeped with mechanical regularity. The stroke was severe, Dr. Martinez explained.
He was young, maybe 30, with kind eyes and exhausted shoulders. "We need to operate within the next 48 hours to relieve the pressure or—" He didn't finish the sentence. "How much?" Avery asked. "Insurance will cover some, but there's still a significant portion." "How much?" "Around 50,000. That's for the surgery, recovery, physical therapy." Avery stopped listening. $50,000. She didn't have $50. She held her mother's hand, the skin thin and cold. Linda Quinn had worked double shifts at the diner for 20 years to put Avery from college. She never asked for anything except for her daughter to build a better life. She had failed her, failed them both. Her phone buzzed. A text from Brandon. "BTW, change the locks. Your stuff's in the hallway. Building manager says you have until midnight." She deleted the message without replying. Outside her mother's room, she called the bank. Her worst fears were confirmed. The account was empty. Brandon had taken everything, including the $2,000 she'd saved from her part-time job. She had nothing. No money, no home, no one to call. But her mother was still breathing, still fighting. That had to be enough. For now.
Chapter 2. Nothing left. Avery spent the night in the hospital waiting room, sleeping in hard plastic chairs. When morning came, she looked like hell and felt worse. Her mother's condition was stable but critical. The 48-hour deadline ticked closer. She called her boss at the coffee shop where she worked part-time. "I need to pick up extra shifts," she said, "as many as possible." "Avery, honey, you make $9.50 an hour. Even if I could give you full-time, which I can't, you're talking about maybe $300 a week." The math was brutal. At that rate, she'd need 5 years to earn enough for the surgery. Her mother had hours, maybe days. She tried the bank next. The loan officer, a middle-aged woman with sympathetic eyes and iron rolls, reviewed Avery's application. "Your credit score is 620, which isn't terrible, but you have no collateral and minimal income. I can approve you for maybe $5,000, and that's if we stretch things." 5,000. Not even close. Avery called every hospital financial aid program she could find. The answers were all the same. Apply, wait 6 weeks for review, maybe get partial assistance. Her mother didn't have 6 weeks. By noon, she was sitting on a bench outside the hospital, staring at her phone. She had called everyone she could think of. Her college roommate who'd moved to Seattle, her cousin in Denver, even her high school guidance counselor. No one had the kind of money she needed. Most barely had enough to help themselves. Her phone buzzed. Another text from Brandon. "Hope you figured out your situation. Tiff and I are in Miami for the weekend, living the dream." The attached photo showed him and a blonde girl on a yacht, champagne glasses raised to the camera. Tiffany Walsh was everything Avery wasn't. Polished, expensive, born lucky. Her smile was bright white and sharp as a blade. Avery deleted the message and blocked his number. She went back inside to check on her mother. Linda looked smaller in the hospital bed, older. The machines kept beeping their steady rhythm, but Avery knew that sound could stop any moment. "I'll figure this out, Mom," she whispered. "I promise." But how? She'd exhausted every legal option. Her credit was shot. She had no family with money, no connections, no safety net. Brandon had made sure of that when he cleaned out our account. She walked to the hospital cafeteria and bought a coffee with quarters she'd found in her coat pocket. At a corner table, she opened her laptop and started searching job listings. Fast food, retail, telemarketing. Nothing paid enough. She needed something that paid real money, fast. Her search got more desperate. High-paying jobs, no experience. Quick cash, Chicago. Emergency money. Most of the results were scams or illegal, but one listing caught her eye. Immediate hiring. Dancers wanted. High pay, flexible hours, no experience necessary. Professional environment. Night shifts available. Serious inquiries only. Call Renee, 312-555-6200.
7890. Avery stared at the screen. She wasn't stupid. She knew what this was. A strip club. She'd never even been inside one, let alone worked in one. The thought made her sick. But $50,000 made her sicker. She closed the laptop and walked back to her mother's room. Linda's breathing was shallow, labored. The monitors showed numbers Avery didn't understand. But the nurses' faces told her everything. Time was running out. She called the number. Yeah? The voice was female, rough around the edges. I'm calling about the dancer position. You got experience? No. How old are you? 24. You clean? No drugs? No diseases? Her face burned. Yes. Can you be here tonight at 8? I'll look you over, see if you got what it takes. Where? Club Inferno, North Side. You know it? No. Google it. And honey, don't waste my time if you're not serious. This ain't a game. The line went dead. Avery sat in the silence of her mother's room, machines beeping around her. 6 months ago, she'd been planning her future with Brandon. She had dreams, goals, a life that made sense. Now she was about to walk into a strip club because she was out of options. She thought about her mother working double shifts at the diner, coming home with aching feet and grease stains on her uniform. Linda had sacrificed everything for Avery's education, her future. She'd never asked for anything in return except for her daughter to be happy. Avery wasn't happy, but happiness was a luxury she couldn't afford anymore. She kissed her mother's forehead. I love you, Mom. I'm going to save you, whatever it takes. Outside the hospital, she called a cab and gave the driver an address she'd never imagined saying out loud. Her reflection in the window looked like a stranger, desperate, hollow-eyed, ready to do things she'd never thought possible. But her mother was still breathing, still fighting. And Avery would fight too, even if it meant losing herself in the process. The cab pulled away from the hospital, carrying her towards a world she didn't understand. Behind her, machines kept her mother alive on borrowed time. Ahead of her waited Club Inferno, and choices she couldn't take back. But she was done being the girl who played by rules that had never protected her. Tonight, she'd learned what it meant to survive by any means necessary. The 48 hours were almost up.
Chapter 3. Club Inferno. Club Inferno sat on the north side of Chicago like a black jewel against the night sky. Neon lights painted the sidewalk red, and a line of expensive cars waited for valet service. Avery stood across the street, her heart hammering against her ribs. This wasn't what she'd expected. The building was sleek, modern, nothing like the seedy places she'd imagined. Men in tailored suits walked through the entrance with confidence that came from having money to burn. This wasn't some backstreet dive. This was where Chicago's elite came to play. She crossed the street on shaking legs. The bouncer was massive, all muscle and dead eyes. He looked her up and down like she was livestock. I'm here to see Renee. About the job? He nodded towards a side door. Around back. The employee entrance was less impressive, a metal door with peeling paint and a security camera. Avery knocked, and the door opened to reveal a woman in her 40s with platinum blonde hair and sharp green eyes. She wore a black blazer that screamed business, not pleasure. You the girl who called? Avery Quinn. I'm Renee Carter. Come on. The back hallway was narrow and dimly lit, nothing like the luxury she'd glimpsed through the front windows. Renee led her to a small office crammed with filing cabinets and security monitors showing different angles of the club. Sit. Renee settled behind her desk and studied Avery like a specimen. You look nervous. I am. Good. Means you got a brain. You know what this place is? A strip club. Wrong.
This is a business. High-end entertainment for men who pay premium prices. We got rules here, and girls who break them don't last. Lean forward. Why you need this job? My mother's dying. I need money for her surgery. How much? 50,000. Renee's eyebrows lifted. That's serious money. You could make that here in a few months. Maybe less if you're smart about it. But honey, this job eats girls alive if they're not ready for it. I'm ready. We'll see. Stand up. Turn around. Avery's face burned, but she did as she was told. Renee examined her like she was buying a car. You're pretty enough. Good body. But pretty don't mean nothing if you can't handle the rest. Renee opened a desk drawer and pulled out a black cocktail dress. Put this on. Let's see how you move. The changing room was the size of a closet, with a cracked mirror and harsh lighting that showed every flaw. Avery stripped out of her jeans and sweater, her hands shaking as she pulled on the dress. It was shorter than anything she'd ever worn, hugging every curve. When she emerged, Renee nodded approval. Better. Now walk like you own the place. Avery took a few hesitant steps. Christ, you walk like you're going to church. These men don't want church girls, honey. They want women who know their power. Try again. It took 20 minutes of practice before Renee was satisfied. By then, her cheeks burned with embarrassment, but something else was building underneath, a strange sort of confidence. The dress, the heels, the way Renee talked about owning her power. It was foreign, but not entirely unwelcome. You'll start tonight, just dancing. No private rooms until you get your feet under you. The house takes 30%, you keep the rest. Tips are yours. Don't do drugs, don't steal, don't get personal with the customers. What if they what? Want more than dancing? Renee's smile was sharp. Honey, every man who walks through that door wants more than dancing. But wanting and getting are different things. You control what you give and what you don't. Remember that. Renee led her through a maze of hallways to the main floor. The club was already busy, music thumping from hidden speakers. The lighting was dim and warm, all red and gold, making everything look expensive and dangerous. Girls moved through the crowd like exotic birds, some dancing on small stages scattered around the room, others sitting with men at private tables. They were beautiful, confident, untouchable. Avery felt like a child playing dress-up. That's your stage. Renee pointed to a circular platform in the corner. 3 songs, then break. Keep it classy. This ain't some truck stop. These men pay for fantasy, not trash. The first song was torture. She moved stiffly, conscious of every eye on her. The music was loud, but she could hear conversations, laughter, the clink of glasses. Men watched her with interest that made her skin crawl and her bank account rejoice. By the second song, muscle memory kicked in, from years of dance classes her mother had scrimped to pay for. She moved with more confidence, finding rhythm in the beat. The men at nearby tables leaned forward, and bills appeared on the edge of the stage. The third song, something clicked. She wasn't Avery Quinn, college graduate and coffee shop worker. She was someone else, someone powerful and untouchable, someone who could make men open their wallets with just a look. When the set ended, she'd made $200 in tips. Not bad for a first-timer, Renee said when she found her at the bar. You might actually survive this. Avery took the money with shaking hands. $200 in 20 minutes. At the coffee shop, she'd have to work 3 days for that much. The next set's in an hour. Get something to eat, hydrate, and remember, you're selling a dream, not yourself. Don't forget the difference. Avery nodded, but she was already thinking about the math. If she could make $600 a night, 5 nights a week, She could have the money for her mother's surgery in just over 2 months. Her mother might not have 2 months, but it was hope. Real hope. For the first time in days, she felt like she could breathe. She didn't notice the man watching her from the VIP section, his dark eyes tracking her every movement. Didn't see him signal to one of the waitresses or hear him ask who the new girl was. But she felt something, a weight, a presence, like being watched by a predator. When she looked up, scanning the crowd, she saw nothing but shadows and smoke. But the feeling remained, following her through the rest of the night like a promise or a threat.
Chapter 4. The Man in the Shadows. By her third set, Avery had found her rhythm. The stage no longer felt foreign, and the men's stares no longer made her want to hide. She moved with growing confidence, her body responding to the music like it had been waiting for this moment her entire life. The money helped. $700 in tips, more than she'd made in 2 weeks at the coffee shop. Every bill that landed on the stage was a step closer to saving her mother. She was collecting her earnings when Renee appeared at her side, expression unreadable. VIP room 3, now. Avery's stomach dropped. I thought you said no private rooms until... This isn't a request. Renee's voice was sharp. And it's not a regular customer. Just be professional. What does that mean? It means smile, dance, and keep your mouth shut unless he asks you a direct question. He's not like the others. Renee led her through a corridor lined with closed doors. The VIP section was quieter, more exclusive. Thick carpets muffled sound, and the lighting was softer, more intimate. Everything here cost more, meant more, mattered more. Room 3 was at the end of the hall. Renee knocked once, waited for a response Avery couldn't hear, then opened the door. The room was larger than she'd expected, with leather seating arranged around a small stage and table. Expensive whiskey sat untouched in crystal glasses, but Avery barely noticed the decor because her attention was captured by the man sitting in the shadows. He was maybe 35, built like he spent time in the gym, but didn't need to prove it. Dark hair, darker eyes, wearing a suit that probably cost more than her mother's monthly rent. He sat perfectly still, watching her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. "Close the door," he said to Renee without looking away from Avery. Renee left without another word, and suddenly Avery was alone with a stranger who felt dangerous in ways she couldn't name. "What's your name?" he asked. "Avery." The word came out as barely a whisper. "Your real name." She nodded, surprised by the question. Most customers didn't care about real names. "Sit." It wasn't a request. Avery perched on the edge of the chair across from him, hyper-aware of how short her dress was, how exposed she felt. He studied her face like he was memorizing it. "You're new." "Yes." "Why are you here?" The question caught her off guard. I need the money." "For what?" She hesitated. Customers usually didn't want to know about her problems, but something in his eyes made her answer honestly. "My mother, she's sick." He nodded like this made perfect sense. "Drink?" There were 2 glasses on the table. He pushed one toward her. Whiskey. Neat. She usually didn't drink, but her nerves were screaming. She took a small sip and tried not to cough at the burn. "You're not what I expected," he said. "What did you expect?" "Someone harder. Someone who belonged here." His eyes never left her face. "You don't belong here." "I'm here anyway." "Yes, you are." He lifted his glass but didn't drink. "Dance for me." Avery stood on unsteady legs and moved to the small stage. The room had no music, just silence and his gaze. She'd never danced without music before, but somehow she found a rhythm in her own heartbeat. She moved slowly, carefully, trying to remember Renee's advice about selling fantasy,
But this felt different from the main floor, more personal, more real. When she looked at him, he was leaning forward slightly, his drink forgotten. The intensity in his eyes made her stomach flutter with something that wasn't fear. "Stop," he said quietly. She froze. "Come here." She stepped off the stage, and he stood to meet her. He was taller than she'd thought, and when he reached out to touch her face, his hand was warm against her skin. "You're scared," he observed. "Yes." "Of me?" "I don't know what you are." Something that might have been a smile touched his lips. "Smart girl." He traced his thumb along her jawline, and she found herself leaning into the touch. This was wrong, dangerous, completely against every rule Renee had given her, but she couldn't make herself step away. "What's your favorite drink?" he asked. The question was so unexpected, she answered without thinking. "Amaretto sour." He nodded to someone she couldn't see, and within minutes a waitress appeared with a drink. Avery stared at it, wondering how he'd summoned someone so quickly. "Drink," he said. She did, and it was perfect. Not too sweet, not too strong. Exactly how she liked it. "How did you—" "I pay attention." He moved closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne, feel the heat from his body. "Dance with me." There was still no music, but when he pulled her against him, she didn't need it. They moved together in the silence, her body fitting against his like they'd done this before. His hand was firm on her lower back, guiding her movements. "You're different," she whispered. "How?" "The other men, they look at me like I'm something to buy. You look at me like I'm something to keep." His grip tightened slightly. "Maybe I am." The words should have terrified her. Instead, they sent heat coursing through her veins. She looked up at him, and the space between them seemed to disappear. When he kissed her, it was nothing like the fumbling kisses she'd shed with Brandon. This was possession, demand, a claiming that made her knees weak. She kissed him back without thinking, her hands fisting in his shirt. He pulled away first, his breathing slightly uneven. "You should go." "Why?" "Because if you don't, I won't let you." The words hung in the air between them like a promise and a threat. Avery felt like she was standing on the edge of a cliff, and he was offering to either catch her or push her over. "I have to work." "No, you're done for tonight." "I need the money." "You'll get paid." He stepped back, creating distance between them. "Go home, Avery. Think about what you want." "What I want?" His smile was sharp, predatory. "Whether you want to keep dancing for strangers or whether you want to dance for me." He pressed something in her hand, a card with only a phone number, but it felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. "I don't even know your name." "You will." The door opened and Renee appeared. "Time to go." But her voice was different, respectful, almost deferential. Avery followed her out of the room, her legs shaking. In the hallway, she turned back, but the door was already closed. "Who was that?" she asked Renee. "Someone you don't want to mess with." "That's not an answer." Renee stopped walking and faced her. "Honey, there are some men in this world who take what they want, and there are others who buy what they want. Then there are the ones who don't need to do either because everything already belongs to them." She looked back at the closed door. "That's him." Avery clutched the card in her hand. The number was the only thing on it, but it felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. "I don't even know your name." "You will." "What does he want with me?" "I don't know, but whatever it is, it's going to change your life." As they walked back to the main floor, Avery couldn't shake the feeling that she'd just met her salvation or her destruction. Maybe both.
Chapter 5. The Devil's Offer. Avery barely slept. She kept thinking about dark eyes and quiet commands, about the way her body had responded to a stranger's touch. The card sat on her nightstand like an accusation, and every time she looked at it, her heart raced. By morning, reality crashed back. Her mother's surgery was scheduled for tomorrow. Dr. Martinez had called with the news that they'd found a donor match for the procedure, but payment was due up front. $50,000, or they'd give the spot to someone else. She'd made $800 at the club, but that was still $49,000 short. Even working every night for months wouldn't be fast enough. She arrived at the hospital early, hoping to see her mother awake, but Linda was still unconscious, machines breathing for her. The ICU nurse, a kind woman named Helen, pulled Avery aside. "Honey, I'm not supposed to say this, but you need to know. Without the surgery, she's got maybe 48 hours. With it?" Helen squeezed her shoulder. "She's got a fighting chance." 48 hours. The number echoed in Avery's head as she sat beside her mother's bed, holding her cold hand. She thought about Brandon's betrayal, about dancing for strangers, about the man who'd kissed her like he owned her. She thought about the card in her purse. At 3 o'clock, she stepped outside for air and found herself staring at 3 black SUVs parked across from the hospital entrance. Tinted windows, expensive rims, engines still running. They looked like they were waiting for something or someone. A man in a suit approached her. "Ms. Quinn?" "Yes." "Someone wants to see you." Avery's blood ran cold. "Who?" "Please come with me." It wasn't a request. 2 more men appeared from the vehicles, flanking her. Not threatening, but not offering choices either. Avery looked back at the hospital where her mother lay dying, then at the men who could probably break her in half without breaking a sweat. "Am I in trouble?" "That depends on you." They guided her to the middle SUV. The interior was luxury, leather seats, tinted windows, soundproofing. And sitting across from her, like he'd never left her thoughts, was the man from the club. In daylight, he was even more intimidating. The expensive suit, the way he held himself, the casual way he commanded the men around him, everything screamed power. Real power, the kind that didn't need to announce itself. "Hello, Avery." "How do you know where I am?" "I know a lot of things." He studied her face. "Your mother's surgery is tomorrow." It wasn't a question. Avery's heart hammered against her ribs. "How do you—" $50,000, due at admission. She stared at him. "Have you been watching me?" "I've been watching you since the moment you walked into my club." "Your club?" I own Club Inferno, among other things." He leaned back, perfectly comfortable. "You called the number." "No, I didn't." "But you wanted to." She had. She'd picked up her phone a dozen times, stared at those digits, imagined his voice on the other end, but she'd always hung up before dialing. "What do you want?" "To make you an offer." "I'm not for sale." "Everyone's for sale, Avery. The only question is price." He opened a leather folder and pulled out a photograph. It was her mother, taken yesterday in the ICU. Linda Quinn, 62 years old, massive stroke. Without surgery, she'll be dead by Friday. Avery snatched the photo. "Don't you dare." "I'm not threatening her. I'm offering to save her." "For what?" He was quiet for a long moment, studying her like she was a puzzle he was trying to solve. "I want a child." The words hit her like ice water. "What?" "I want you to carry my child, 9 months of your life, and I'll pay for your mother's surgery, her recovery, her care for the rest of her life."
Avery stared at him. "You're insane." "I'm practical. You need money. I need something that money can't buy." He leaned forward. "I'm not talking about marriage, Avery. No relationship, no promises, no fairy tale. A business arrangement." "You want me to be your surrogate." "I want you to be my heir." The distinction felt important, though she couldn't say why. "And after the baby is born, you're free to go, with enough money to start over wherever you want." Avery's hands shook. "This is crazy. I don't even know you." "You know enough." "I don't even know your name." "Jaxon Reid." The name hit her like a slap. She'd heard it whispered in certain circles, seen it in newspaper headlines she'd barely paid attention to. Jaxon Reid wasn't just rich, he was untouchable, connected, dangerous. "You're him," she whispered. "I'm him. The newspapers say you're..." "The newspapers say a lot of things. Most of them are true." He watched her face carefully. "Are you scared?" "Terrified." "Good. Fear keeps you alive." He pulled out another document. "This is a contract. Lawyers, doctors, protection. Everything would be handled professionally. You'd want for nothing. Except my freedom." "Freedom's overrated when you're dead broke and watching your mother die." The words stung because they were true. Avery looked at the contract, pages of legal language that would bind her to a man she barely knew, a man who could save her mother's life or destroy her own. "Who me?" "Because you're not like the others. You're not here by choice. You're here by necessity. That makes you honest." He paused. "And because when I kissed you last night, you kissed me back like you meant it." Heat flooded her cheeks. That was a mistake. Was it? She wanted to say yes, but the word wouldn't come because it hadn't felt like a mistake. It had felt like coming alive. "How long do I have to decide?" "Your mother's surgery is tomorrow at 9 a.m. The hospital needs payment by 7. He checked his watch. 18 hours. "And if I say no?" "Then you go back to dancing for strangers and hoping miracles happen." His voice was matter-of-fact, not cruel, just honest. "But miracles are rare, Avery. Opportunities like this are rarer." He signaled to the driver and the SUV began moving back toward the hospital. "I'll have someone contact you at 6 a.m. for your answer." "Wait." She gripped the door handle. "If I agree, when would it start?" "Immediately." "The pregnancy?" "Everything." The SUV stopped in front of the hospital. One of his men opened her door, but Jaxon caught her wrist before she could leave. "Avery." His grip was firm but not painful. "I'm not the villain in your story. I'm the only solution to your problem." She looked into his eyes, searching for deception or manipulation, but all she saw was cold, hard truth. "You'll carry my child," he said quietly, "or you'll carry regret to your grave." She pulled free and stumbled out of the SUV. By the time she turned around, the convoy was already pulling away, leaving her standing alone on the sidewalk with a contract in her hands and 18 hours to decide her fate. Inside the hospital, machines kept her mother alive on borrowed time. Outside, Chicago moved on without caring that Avery Quinn's world had just tilted completely off its axis. She looked down at the contract, at pages of legal language that would bind her to a man she barely knew, a man who could save her mother's life or destroy her own. 18 hours to choose between the devil she knew and the devil she didn't. But when the devil was your only option, was it really a choice?
Chapter 6. Terms and Conditions. Avery spent the night reading the contract. Every word, every clause, every legal term that would reshape her life. It was thorough, professional, and absolutely terrifying. Medical care. The best doctors, private hospitals, regular checkups. Living arrangements. A secure apartment, all expenses paid. Compensation. her mother's surgery, plus $2 million upon successful delivery of a healthy child. $2 million. She'd never seen that much money in her entire life. With that kind of money, she could disappear anywhere in the world, start over completely. If she survived giving birth to the child of one of Chicago's most dangerous men. At 5:30 a.m., she kissed her mother's forehead one last time. Linda was still unconscious, but her breathing seemed more labored. Time was running out. "I'm sorry, Mom," she whispered. "I'm about to do something you'd never forgive me for, but I'm going to save you." Her phone rang at exactly 6 a.m. "Yes or no?" The voice was male, professional, not Jaxon. Avery looked at her mother, then at the contract she'd signed an hour ago. "Yes." "A car will pick you up in 30 minutes. Bring nothing. Everything you need will be provided." The line went dead. Avery changed into clean clothes and put the signed contract in her purse. She left everything else. Her old life, her old self, her old dreams. None of it mattered now. The black SUV was waiting when she walked out of the hospital. Different driver, same expensive interior. This time, they drove to the financial district, to a gleaming tower that reached into the Chicago sky. Jaxon's office occupied the entire top floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered views of the city that made her feel like she was flying or falling. He stood with his back to her, talking quietly on a phone. Even from behind, he radiated power. The suit was perfectly tailored, his posture confident. When he turned to face her, his dark eyes showed no emotion. "You signed it." "My mother's surgery is paid for. She'll have the best surgeons in the city." He walked to his desk and picked up another folder. "These are your new arrangements." Inside were keys, addresses, phone numbers. A new life completely mapped out. "The apartment is on Lakeshore Drive, secure building, private entrance. You'll have a driver, bodyguards when necessary." He handed her a credit card. "No limit. Buy whatever you need." She stared at the black card. Her name was already printed on it. "How long have you been planning this?" "Since the moment I saw you dance." "That was 2 days ago. I work fast when I want something." He moved around the desk, closer to her. "We need to discuss expectations." "Expectations?" "You're not my girlfriend, Avery. You're not my lover. You're carrying my child, and that means you follow my rules." The words stung more than they should have. "What rules?" "No alcohol, no drugs, no risky behavior. You'll see my doctors, eat the foods they recommend, take the vitamins they prescribe." He paused. "And you'll see me regularly." "For what?" "To ensure you're taking care of what's mine." Heat flashed through her. "The baby isn't yours until it's born." "Wrong." His voice was quiet, dangerous. "The baby is mine from the moment of conception. You're just a vessel." The casual cruelty of it took her breath away. "I'm not an incubator." "You're whatever I need you to be." They stared at each other across the expensive office. Outside, Chicago hummed with life. People going to jobs they hated, struggling to pay bills, dreaming of something better. Avery had thought she was one of them just days ago. "I want to add something to the contract," she said. His eyebrow lifted. "You're not in a position to negotiate." "I am if you want this to work." She lifted her chin. "I want to see my mother. Weekly visits, minimum 1 hour, no interference." "Done. And I want your word that she'll be safe.
that this arrangement won't put her in danger. Something flickered in his eyes. She'll be protected. Your word, Jaxon. You have it. The use of his first name seemed to surprise him. He studied her face like he was seeing something new. Anything else? When do we start? Today. He moved to the window, hands clasped behind his back. My doctor will examine you this afternoon. If you're healthy, we'll begin immediately. Begin? Trying to get you pregnant. The clinical way he said it made her stomach twist. How romantic. Romance is for people who have choices. We both know what this is. But when he turned back to her, something in his expression had changed. The cold businessman was still there, but underneath was the man who'd kissed her like he was drowning. Your apartment is ready. Logan will drive you there, help you get settled. I'll see you tonight. Tonight? 8 o'clock. He didn't look up from his papers. Wear something that's easy to remove. Her face burned. She wanted to throw the contract in his face and tell him exactly what he could do with his money and his rules. But then she thought of her mother, fighting for her life 3 floors up in an operating room. Fine. She turned to leave, but his voice stopped her. Avery. She looked back. This doesn't have to be unpleasant for either of us. The words hung in the air between them, loaded with possibility and danger. She remembered the way he'd kissed her, the way her body had responded despite every logical reason not to. It doesn't have to be pleasant either, she said. His smile was sharp. We'll see. Logan was waiting in the hallway, tall, silent, watchful. He didn't speak during the ride to her apartment, but she felt his eyes on her in the rearview mirror, studying her, evaluating her, deciding if she was a threat or an asset. The apartment was beautiful. 20th floor, lake views, furniture that cost more than most people's cars. It was also a cage, as elegant and expensive as cages came. Logan handed her the keys. Mr. Reid's instructions are clear. You don't leave without security. You don't talk to reporters. You don't contact anyone from your old life without permission. What if I break the rules? Don't. After he left, Avery stood alone in her beautiful prison, looking out at the lake. Somewhere across the city, surgeons were cutting into her mother's brain, trying to save her life. In a few hours, Jaxon Reid would arrive to claim what he'd bought. She touched her stomach, imagining a child growing there. His child. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, it made her feel something she hadn't felt in years. Powerful. She was no longer the girl who'd been dumped in a restaurant and left with nothing. She was the woman who'd made a deal with the devil and come out ahead. At least that's what she told herself, as she waited for 8 o'clock and for the man who now owned her body to come collect what he'd paid for.
Chapter 7. Boundaries and Lies. The doctor arrived at noon. Dr. Sarah Chen was in her 40s, professional but kind, carrying a medical bag that looked like it cost more than Avery's old car. I'm here to do a complete physical, she explained. Blood work, gynecological exam, genetic screening. Mr. Reid wants to ensure optimal conditions for conception. Avery submitted to the tests, trying not to think about what they meant. Dr. Chen was thorough but gentle, explaining each procedure. Still, being examined like a prize mare made Avery's skin crawl. You're in excellent health, Dr. Chen said afterward. No concerns about fertility or carrying to term. I'll have the full results tomorrow, but I don't anticipate any issues. And then? Then we begin monitoring your cycle. When you're ovulating, Mr. Reid will be notified. She paused, studying Avery's face.
I know this is all very clinical, but I want you to understand, if you have any concerns, any questions, you can call me directly. She left a card with her personal number. Avery wondered how many other women had received the same card, the same clinical attention. At 7:30, she tried on 3 different outfits before settling for a simple black dress, easy to remove, as requested. The thought made her stomach churn. Jaxon arrived at exactly 8, dressed in dark slacks and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up. He looked less like a businessman and more like a man preparing for something intimate. "How was the appointment?" he asked, helping himself to a drink from her bar. "Fine. Dr. Chen said you're healthy." "Good for me." He smiled at her sarcasm. "You're angry." "I'm processing." "Process faster. We don't have time for emotional complications." Avery stood by the window, arms crossed. "Is this how it's going to be? You show up, we have sex, you leave?" "That's the arrangement." "The arrangement is that I carry your baby. Everything else is negotiable." "Wrong." He set down his drink and moved toward her. "Everything else is mine to decide." "Not everything. What exactly do you think you control here, Avery?" She turned to face him, lifting her chin. "Whether I enjoy it." Something flashed in his eyes. Surprise, maybe even approval. "Fair enough." He reached for her and she didn't pull away. His hands were warm on her arms, his touch gentle despite his cold words. When he kissed her, it was nothing like the desperate encounter at the club. This was slower, more deliberate, like he was claiming territory. "The bedroom," he said against her lips. She led him through the apartment, her heart hammering. The bedroom was elegant, dominated by a king bed she'd never slept in. It felt like a stage set for a performance she didn't know how to give. "Turn around," he said. She did, and he felt him unzip her dress. It fell to the floor, pooling around her feet. His fingers traced her spine, making her shiver. "You're beautiful," he said, and for a moment his voice was different, less commanding, more human. She turned back to him. "This is just business to you." "Yes." "Then why do you look at me like that?" "Like what?" "Like you want more than just a baby." His expression hardened. "I want what I want. Nothing more, nothing less." But when he kissed her again, when his hands moved over her body with careful attention to her responses, it felt like more. It felt like he was trying to memorize her, to brand himself on her skin. They moved to the bed, and he was gentle, patient, nothing like the cold transaction she'd expected. He touched her like she mattered, like her pleasure was important to him. "Why?" she whispered. "Why what?" "Why are you being careful with me?" "Because I need you healthy, relaxed, willing to participate." The clinical explanation should have hurt. Instead, it made her angry. "Is that all?" "That's all." She pulled away from him, sitting up. "Then we're done here." "Excuse me?" "You heard me. If this is just business, if I'm just an incubator, then we do this your way. Fast, efficient, no pretense." She met his eyes. "But don't touch me like you care if you don't." He stared at her for a long moment. "You're not in a position to make demands." "I'm in a position to make this pleasant or unpleasant for both of us." They faced off across the bed, and Avery realized this was the first real test of power between them. He could force her compliance, but he couldn't force her participation. "What do you want?" he asked finally. "Honesty." "About what?" "About why you chose me. Why not artificial insemination? Why not any of the other girls at the club? Why me?" His jaw tightened. "Because you're not like them." "How?" You're not impressed by money. You're not here by choice. You have something to fight for that matters more than yourself." He paused. "And because when I touch you, you respond like you mean it. Even though you don't want me to? Even though I don't want you to." The admission hung in the air between them. Avery felt something shift, a crack in his armor. "You do want me," she said quietly. "Want is irrelevant. This is business." "Is it?" Instead of answering, he pulled her back down to him, kissing her with an intensity that felt anything but businesslike. This time, when he touched her, she didn't question his motives. She just felt his hands, his mouth, the weight of him against her. Afterward, they lay in silence. Avery expected him to leave immediately, but he stayed, one arm around her while she traced patterns on his chest. "The baby," she said. "What happens when it's born?" "I raise it." "And me?" "You get your money and your freedom." "What if I want to be part of its life?" "That's not the deal." "The deal could change." "No, it couldn't." His voice was final, but Avery felt the way his body tensed. This was not as simple for him as he pretended. "What if I get attached?" she asked. "Don't." "What if you do?" "I won't." But he didn't let go of her, and when she looked up at him, she saw something in his eyes that looked remarkably like fear. "This is going to be harder than either of us expected," she said. "No, it's going to be exactly what we agreed to." He left an hour later, but his scent lingered on her sheets and the taste of him was still on her lips. Avery lay alone in the expensive bed, staring at the ceiling. She'd signed a contract to have a baby with a stranger, but the man who just left her bed wasn't a stranger anymore. He was becoming something far more dangerous, someone she could care about. And that, she realized, was exactly what he was afraid of too.
Chapter 8. Ghost of the Ex. 3 weeks into her new life, Avery had fallen into a routine. Morning appointments with Dr. Chen, afternoons reading or walking along the lake with her bodyguard trailing behind, evenings with Jaxon when her cycle indicated optimal timing. They were getting to know each other's bodies, finding rhythms that worked. He was still controlled, still insisted this was business, but she caught him watching her sometimes with an expression that suggested otherwise. She'd just returned from visiting her mother, who was recovering well from surgery, when Logan met her at the apartment entrance. "We have a problem," he said. "What kind of problem?" "The kind with the big mouth and bad timing." He led her through the lobby to the security office, where monitors showed different angles of the building's entrance. On one screen, she saw a familiar figure pacing outside. Brandon. Her stomach dropped. "How did he find me?" "That's what we're trying to figure out," Logan spoke into his radio. "He's been out there for 2 hours asking about you. Building security won't let him up, but he's not leaving." Avery stared at the screen. Brandon looked different. Thinner, agitated, wearing a suit that had seen better days. Whatever success he'd found with Tiffany Walsh wasn't going as planned. "I should talk to him." "Absolutely not. He's not dangerous, just pathetic." "Mr. Reid's orders are clear. No contact with anyone from your previous life." But as they watched, Brandon pulled out his phone and started taking pictures of the building, of the security cameras, of anything that might be useful later. "He's documenting," Logan muttered. "This isn't a social call." 20 minutes later, Brandon was gone, but the damage was done. Jaxon arrived that evening in a mood darker than he'd ever seen. "Explain to me," he said without preamble, "why is your ex-boyfriend photographing my property?"
"I don't know. I haven't spoken to him since Since he cleaned out your bank account and left you with nothing, Jaxon poured himself a drink, his movements sharp with controlled anger. What does he want? Money, probably. He always wants money. From you? From whoever's convenient. Jackson's phone buzzed. He answered it with a curt, "What?" Avery could hear Logan's voice, but not the words. Whatever he was saying made Jackson's expression go from angry to dangerous. "I'll be right there." He ended the call and looked at her. "Stay here. Don't answer the door for anyone." "What's happening?" "Your past is catching up to your present." He left without explanation, and Avery spent the next 2 hours pacing her apartment, imagining worst-case scenarios. At 11:30, her phone rang. "Avery?" The voice was shaky, scared. "Brandon? I need to see you. It's important." "How did you get this number?" "It doesn't matter. I'm downstairs. Let me up." "No." "Please, I'm trying to help you." Despite everything, the desperation in his voice got to her. "Help me with what?" "You don't know what you've gotten yourself into. This guy Reid, he's dangerous. I've been asking questions, and the things I've heard..." "Stop. He's killed people, Avery. Actually killed them. You need to get out of there." The line went dead. Avery stared at her phone, her heart racing. She already knew Jaxon was dangerous. She'd seen it in his eyes, felt it in the way people responded to him. But hearing it from Brandon made it real in a way it hadn't been before. Her door chimed. The security system showed Brandon in the hallway looking over his shoulder like he expected trouble. Against every instruction she'd been given, she opened the door. "Jesus, you look good." Brandon pushed past her into the apartment. "This place is incredible. He's really taking care of you." "What do you want?" "To save you from making the biggest mistake of your life." He walked to the window, nervous energy radiating from him. "Do you know who he is? Really know?" "I know enough." "He runs half of the illegal business in Chicago. Drugs, weapons, money laundering." "Stop." "He's using you, Avery. Whatever he's promised you, it's not worth your life." She studied his face, looking for genuine concern and finding mostly fear. "What did you do, Brandon?" "Nothing. I just asked some questions." "What did you do?" He had the grace to look ashamed. "I may have mentioned to a few people that you were connected to him now, that you might be willing to share information." Horror washed over her. "You tried to turn me into an informant?" "I was trying to protect you." "You were trying to make money off me again." "That's not..." "Okay, maybe I thought there might be a reward, but..." The front door opened, and Jaxon walked in like he owned the place, which technically he did. His eyes found Brandon immediately, and the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. "Brandon Cole, we meet at last." Brandon went white. I was just leaving." "No, you weren't." Logan appeared behind Jaxon, along with 2 other men Avery didn't recognize. The apartment suddenly felt very small. "Sit down, Brandon," Jaxon said. "We need to talk." "I don't have anything to say to you, but I have something to say to you." The men moved to flank Brandon, who sank into a chair like his legs had given out. Jaxon poured himself a drink, perfectly calm. "You've been asking questions about me, about Avery. That's interesting behavior for someone who supposedly moved on to better things. I was concerned. You were looking for leverage." Jackson's voice was quiet, which somehow made it more frightening. "You thought you could use her connection to me for your own benefit." "That's not true." Isn't it? Let me tell you what I think happened. You lost your job with Walls Construction. Yes, I know about that. Tiffany found out you were using her father's company credit card for personal expenses. Now you're desperate, broke, and looking for any angle to make money. Jackson's face crumbled. How do you... I know everything about you, Brandon. Your debts, your failures, your pathetic attempts to crawl back to relevance. Jaxon moved closer. But what really interests me is what you told Jimmy Torino. Avery didn't know who Jimmy Torino was, but Brandon clearly did. He went from white to green. You offered to provide information about my business in exchange for money. You told him you had an inside source. Jackson's hand settled on Brandon's shoulder, looking casual, but making the other man flinch. That inside source being Avery. I never said her name. You didn't have to. Jaxon nodded to one of his men, who handed him something Avery couldn't see. When Jaxon turned back to Brandon, he was holding a small digital recorder. This is your voice, isn't it? He pressed play. Brandon's voice filled the room, tinny through the small speaker, but unmistakably his. This girl who's close to Reid now, real close, she could find out things, for the right price. The recording stopped. Brandon looked like he might vomit. Here's what's going to happen, Jaxon said. You're going to leave Chicago. Tonight. You're going to close your mouth about anything or anyone connected to me. And you're never going to contact Avery again. Okay, Brandon whispered. But first, you're going to learn why threatening what's mine is a bad idea. Jaxon nodded again, and his men lifted Brandon from the chair. Brandon struggled briefly, then went limp with terror. Wait, Avery said. Don't hurt him. Jaxon looked at her with genuine surprise. He put you in danger. He's an idiot, not a Brett. He became a threat the moment he said your name to the wrong people. Please. Something in her voice made him pause. He betrayed you once already. I know, but killing him won't fix that. I wasn't going to kill him. Jaxon's smile was sharp. Just make sure he understands the consequences of his choices. Please. Jaxon studied her face for a long moment. Then he waved his men back. You're lucky she's soft-hearted, he told Brandon. Pack your things. Be out of the city by dawn. If I see you again, her mercy won't protect you.
Brandon stumbled toward the door, then stopped. Avery, come with me. It's not too late. She looked at him, this man who'd promised her forever and left her with nothing, then at Jaxon, who'd promised her nothing but had given her everything she needed to survive. Goodbye, Brandon. He left without another word. Jaxon's man followed, leaving her along with the man who just threatened her ex-boyfriend's life and then spared it because she'd asked. You shouldn't have opened the door, he said. I know. You could have been killed. I know. Then why? She looked out the window at the city lights, at the world that seemed both farther away and more dangerous than it had that morning. Because sometimes the past doesn't let go easily. He moved behind her, his hands settling on her shoulders. Your past is gone, Avery. This is your life now. Is it always going to be like this? Violence and threats? Only when necessary. And you decide what's necessary. I decide everything that affects what's mine. She turned in his arms. Are you mine? He didn't answer,
But when he kissed her, it felt like a claim, a promise, and a warning all at once. Later, as he held her in the aftermath of lovemaking that felt less like business and more like desperation, she realized that Brandon had been right about one thing. She didn't know what she'd gotten herself into, but it was too late to get out. Chapter 9: Heat and Distance. After Brandon's visit, security around Avery doubled. She couldn't walk to the corner store without Logan or one of his men shadowing her. The beautiful apartment felt more like a cage every day. But Jackson's visits became more frequent, and not just during her fertile window. He'd show up for dinner, or to work from her kitchen table, or sometimes just to sit on her couch and drink whiskey while she read. "You don't have to stay," she told him one evening as rain pelted the windows. "I'm not staying. I'm working." "On what?" "Business." He was always vague about his work, but she'd learned to read his moods. When he was tense, someone had crossed him. When he was distracted, he was planning something. Tonight, he seemed almost peaceful. "How was your mother today?" he asked. The question surprised her. He rarely asked about her visits to the hospital. "Good. She's getting stronger. The physical therapy is helping." "She'll recover fully?" "The doctors think so. Thanks to you." He nodded, but didn't respond. They sat in comfortable silence, him working on his laptop while she curled up with a book. It felt domestic, normal, like they were a real couple instead of two people bound by a contract. "Jaxon." "Why did you really choose me?" He looked up from his screen. "I told you." "You told me part of it, but there's more, isn't there?" "Why do you think there's more?" "Because you could have any woman in the city, models, socialites, women who would be thrilled to have your baby and your money. Why pick someone who fights you every step of the way?" He closed the laptop and gave him his full attention. "Maybe I like the fight." "Do you?" "Sometimes." She set down her book and moved to the couch beside him. "What aren't you telling me?" "Nothing you need to know." "What if I want to know?" Want and need are different things. She was close enough to see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes, close enough to smell his cologne. "What if I need to know?" "Why would you need to know?" "Because I'm starting to care about you." The words hung in the air between them like a confession. She hadn't meant to say them, but once they were out, she couldn't take them back. "That's a mistake," he said quietly. "Is it?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because caring gets you hurt. Everything gets you hurt eventually." He reached up to touch her face, his thumb tracing her cheekbone. "Not if you don't let it matter." "Does this matter?" she asked, covering his hand with hers. "No." "Liar." "Avery." She kissed him before he could finish the warning. It was different from the careful kisses they'd shared during their scheduled encounters. This was desperate, hungry, full of all the things they weren't supposed to feel. He responded immediately, his arms pulling her against him, his mouth opening under hers. She could taste the whiskey on his tongue, feel the tension in his shoulders as he fought between desire and control. She won. For once, she won. He pulled her onto his lap, his hands tangling in her hair, and she felt powerful in a way she'd never experienced. This wasn't the careful choreography of trying to conceive. This was raw want, honest need, the kind of chemistry that burned through pretense. "Jaxon," he said against her mouth. "Don't talk. We shouldn't. Don't think." She kissed him again, pouring everything she couldn't say into the connection between them. He tasted like whiskey and danger, like everything she'd been taught to avoid and everything she'd never known she wanted. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, she saw something in his eyes she'd never seen before. Vulnerability. Need. Something that looked almost like fear. "This isn't part of the deal," he said. "I know. It can't happen again." "Why not?" Instead of answering, he lifted her off his lap and stood, putting distance between them. The cold businessman was back, the man who'd kissed her like he was drowning, locked away. "I should go." "Stay." "No." "Jaxon." This was a mistake. The words hit her like a slap. Which part? The kiss or caring about you? Both. He gathered his things with efficient movements, not looking at her. She watched him retreat behind walls she thought were coming down, and it hurt more than she expected. "You can't do this anymore." "Doing what?" "Acting like you feel nothing when I know you do." "You don't know anything about what I feel." "I know you're scared." That stopped him. He turned back to her, and for a moment, the mask slipped. "Scared of what?" "Of wanting something you can't control." "I control everything in my life. Not this. Not me. Not what's happening between us." "Nothing is happening between us." Keep telling yourself that. He moved toward the door, then stopped. "This arrangement has an expiration date, Avery. Don't forget that." "Is that supposed to scare me?" "It's supposed to remind you not to get attached." Too late. The admission hung between them. He stared at her for a long moment, and she saw the war playing out in his expression. Want versus wisdom. Desire versus duty. Want lost. "Good night, Avery." He laughed without another word, and she was alone with the taste of him still on her lips and the echo of his warnings in her ears. She touched her mouth, remembering the way he'd kissed her back, the way his hands had shaken slightly when he touched her face. He could deny it all he wanted, but she'd felt his walls crumbling in that moment. The question was whether he'd rebuild them higher or let them fall completely. Outside, lightning split the sky and thunder rolled across the lake. The storm was getting closer, and she had a feeling it was going to be a long night. 3 hours later, her phone buzzed with a text from Jaxon. "I'm sorry." She stared at the message for a long time before typing back. "For what?" "For wanting things I can't have." "Who says you can't have them?" He didn't respond, but she hadn't expected him to. Jaxon Reid was a man who took what he wanted, except when what he wanted was something that might actually matter. She fell asleep on the couch, her phone in her hand, waiting for a response that never came. But somewhere across the city, she knew he was laying awake too, fighting the same battle she was losing. The battle between what they'd agreed to and what they were becoming. And despite his warnings, despite the contract and the complications and the inevitable end, she found herself hoping that want would win, eventually, even if it destroyed them both.
Chapter 10. Pregnant. The nausea started on a Tuesday. Avery blamed it on the eggs Benedict she'd had for breakfast, but when it continued for 3 days straight, accompanied by exhaustion that felt like lead in her bones, she knew. Dr. Chen confirmed it with a blood test. "Congratulations," she said with a professional smile. "You're about 6 weeks along. Everything looks normal." 6 weeks. Avery stared at the test results, trying to process the reality. There was a life growing inside her, Jaxon's child. "I'll need to see you weekly now," Dr. Chen continued. "We'll monitor everything closely. Do you have any questions?" "When do I tell him?" Mr. Reid asked to be notified immediately when this happened. Of course he had. Avery nodded, her hands unconsciously moving to her still flat stomach. "How do I tell him?"
However feels right to you. This is good news, Avery. Try to remember that. But as she rode home in the back of Logan's car, all she could think about was how everything was about to change. The pregnancy made their arrangement real in a way it hadn't been before. She wasn't just Jaxon's, whatever she was the mother of his child. She called him from her apartment. "We need to talk," she said when he answered. "About what?" "Something that can't be discussed over the phone." A pause. "I'll be there in an hour." She spent the hour pacing, rehearsing different ways to break the news. None of them felt right. How do you tell someone you barely know that you're carrying their child? How do you explain that what started as a business arrangement now felt like the most important thing that had ever happened to you? Jaxon arrived exactly on time, looking impeccable as always. But she'd learned to read the subtle signs of his moves, the slight tension in his shoulders, the way his eyes scanned the room when he was worried. "You sounded strange on the phone," he said. "Sit down." "I prefer to stand." "Jaxon, sit down." Something in her voice made him comply. He settled on the couch, watching her with growing intensity. "I saw Dr. Chen today," she began. His entire body went still. "And? I'm pregnant." The words seemed to echo in the silence. Jaxon stared at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he stood abruptly and walked to the window, his back to her. "How far along?" His voice was carefully controlled. 6 weeks. "The baby is healthy?" "As far as we can tell." He nodded, still not turning around. Avery watched his reflection in the glass, trying to gauge his reaction. She'd expected satisfaction, maybe relief. Instead, he looked almost overwhelmed. "Jaxon, I need a drink." He moved to her bar with quick, efficient movements, pouring whiskey with hands that weren't quite steady. He downed it in one swallow, then poured another. "This is what we wanted," she said carefully. "I know." "Then why do you look like someone died?" He finally turned to face her, and she was shocked by what she saw in his eyes. Not satisfaction or victory, but something raw and vulnerable. Because everything just became real. It was already real. No, it was theoretical, a plan, a contract. He moved closer to her. "Now it's a child, my child." The possessiveness in his voice should have irritated her. Instead, it sent warmth spreading through her chest. "Are you happy?" she asked. "I don't know what I am." He sat down heavily on the couch, running his hands through his hair. For the first time she'd known him, Jaxon Reid looked uncertain. "Talk to me," she said, settling beside him. "I had a son once," he said quietly. The words hit her like a physical blow. "What?" "Years ago, before I became this." He gestured vaguely at himself. "His mother was someone I thought I loved. She took him and disappeared when he was 2. I never saw him again." Avery felt her heart break for him. Jaxon. He'd be 8 now, maybe 9. I don't even know if he's alive. "Is that why you want this baby? To replace him?" "I want this baby because I learned that love makes you weak, but blood makes you strong." He looked at her. "I can't lose another child." "You won't." "You don't know that." "I do know that." She reached for his hand, surprised when he didn't pull away. "I'm not going anywhere. Everyone goes somewhere eventually. Not me, not while I'm carrying your baby." He studied her face like he was looking for lies. "The contract says..." "Forget the contract. I'm telling you, as the mother of your child, that I'm not going anywhere." Something shifted in his expression. He lifted his free hand to her face, touching her cheek with reverent fingers. "You're really pregnant," he said wondrously. "I'm really pregnant. With my baby. With your baby." He kissed her then, soft and careful, like she was made of glass. When he pulled back, his eyes were bright with something that looked suspiciously like tears. "I need to make some calls," he said. "Security, doctors, arrangements. Jaxon, you'll need better protection now, and a different apartment, something more secure. And Dr. Chen will need to coordinate with specialists. Jaxon." He stopped his rapid-fire planning and looked at her. "Breathe," she said. He did, a long, shaky inhale. "I'm scared," he admitted. "Of what?" "Of caring too much.
of losing control, of something happening to you or the baby. Nothing's going to happen. You can't promise that. No, she agreed. But I can promise that I'll fight for this baby, for us. Can you? He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he nodded. I'll fight for what's mine. Are you yours? Yes. The simple word carried more weight than all his previous claims of ownership. This wasn't about contracts or arrangements. This was about family. Then we're going to be okay, she said. He pulled her against him, holding her like she might disappear. She could feel his heart racing against her ear, could sense the storm of emotions he was trying to control. I don't know how to do this, he said quietly. Do what? Care about someone more than I care about myself. You learn as you go. What if I mess it up? Then you try again. He held her tighter. I can't lose you. You won't. Promise me. I promise. It was a promise she had no right to make, but she made it anyway. Because in that moment, feeling the fierce protectiveness radiating from him, she believed it herself. They were having a baby. Everything else they'd figure out along the way. Later that night, as she lay in bed with Jaxon's hand resting protectively on her stomach, she realized that somewhere along the way, their arrangement had become something else entirely. It had become love. She just wondered if he'd ever admit it. Chapter 11. The Real Enemy. The attack came 3 weeks later on what should have been a routine visit to Dr. Chen's office. Avery was leaving the medical building, one hand resting on her still small bump, when Logan suddenly grabbed her arm. Something's wrong, he said, his eyes scanning the parking garage. What do you mean? Too quiet, and that van's been following us. Before she could ask what van, the world exploded into chaos. Men in black masks poured out from behind parked cars, moving with military precision. Logan shoved Avery behind a concrete pillar and drew his gun. Stay down. The gunfire was deafening in the enclosed space. Avery pressed herself against the concrete, her heart hammering as bullets sparked off metal and concrete around her. She could see Logan returning fire, but they were outnumbered. A hand grabbed her ankle and she screamed. One of the masked men was dragging her from behind the pillar, his grip iron-strong despite her struggles. Got her, he shouted. Logan spun toward them, but more gunmen appeared, forcing him to take cover. Avery was hauled toward a black van, her feet barely touching the ground. Let me go, she screamed, clawing at her captor's hands. Shut up. A cloth pressed over her mouth and nose, chemical sweet and suffocating. The world started to fade at the edges as the van doors slammed shut behind her. The last thing she heard was Logan shouting her name. Poof. She woke up in darkness, her head pounding and her mouth tasting like copper. The room was small, windowless, smelling of concrete and motor oil. A warehouse, maybe, or a garage. Her hands were zip-tied behind her back, her ankles bound to a metal chair. Panic flooded through her as she remembered the attack, the van, the chloroform. The baby. Was the baby okay? She's awake. A man stepped out of the shadows, tall, silver-haired, wearing an expensive suit that didn't match the industrial surroundings. His smile was cold, predatory. Miss Quinn, we meet at last. Who are you? Vincent Maddox. I believe you know that name. She did. Jaxon had mentioned it in passing, a rival, someone who'd been testing boundaries lately. She'd never imagined she'd meet him like this. What do you want? What everyone wants, my dear. Power, leverage, the ability to make people do what you need them to do. He pulled up a chair and sat across from her. You represent all three. I don't know anything about Jaxon's business. Oh, but you know something much more valuable. You know how to hurt him. The words made her blood run cold. He won't negotiate with you. Won't he? Maddox smiled. A man like Jaxon Reid doesn't care about much in this world. But you and that baby you're carrying, you're different. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? I've been watching you both for weeks. The way he looks at you,
The way he's changed his security protocols, canceled meetings to spend time with you. You've made him soft, Miss Quinn, and soft men make mistakes. Avery pulled against the zip ties, but they only cut deeper into her wrists. If you hurt me, he'll kill you. If I hurt you, he'll give me exactly what I want to get you back. Which is his territory, his connections, his shipping routes. Maddox leaned forward. Everything he's built, I'll take. And he'll hand it over with a smile to save you and his precious heir. You're insane if you think he'll destroy his empire for me. Am I? Let's find out. Maddox nodded to someone behind her, and she heard footsteps, the sound of equipment being set up. Then her phone was thrust into her hands, the zip ties cut just enough to free her fingers. Call him, Maddox said. No. Call him, or I'll hurt the baby. The threat hit her like ice water. Her hands shook as she unlocked her phone and found Jaxon's number. It rang once before he answered. Avery? Where are you? Logan said. I'm okay, for now. The line went silent. When Jaxon spoke again, his voice was deadly quiet. Put him on. Maddox took the phone. Hello, Jaxon. I believe we have something to discuss. If you hurt her, I won't, as long as you're reasonable. Maddox's tone was conversational, like they were discussing the weather. I'm sure you've guessed what I want. Name your price. Everything. Your territories, your operations, your connections, all of it. Fine. The quick agreement seemed to surprise Maddox. Just like that? Just like that. I thought you'd at least try to negotiate. There's nothing to negotiate. You have what matters most to me. Avery felt tears prick her eyes at the quiet certainty in his voice. He was going to give up everything for
her and the baby. How do I know you won't just take her back once I have what I want? Maddox asked. Because I'll be dead. You can't run my organization without me, and you can't trust me to stay away, so you'll kill me once the transfer is complete. Smart man. When and where? The old Riverside Warehouse, Pier 47, tomorrow at midnight. Come alone and bring the transfer codes for all your accounts. I'll be there. The line went dead. Maddox smiled at Avery like he'd just won the lottery. Your boyfriend is smarter than I expected, and more devoted. He's not my boyfriend. No? Then what is he? The answer came to her with startling clarity. He's the father of my child. And that's enough to make him sacrifice everything? That's enough to make him fight for everything. Maddox's smile faltered slightly. He agreed to my terms. He agreed to show up. That doesn't mean he's giving up. He will when he sees the alternative. But as the hours passed, waiting in the cold warehouse, Avery found herself believing her own words. Jaxon Reid hadn't built an empire by giving up when the stakes were high. He'd built it by being smarter, more ruthless, and more determined than everyone else. And now he wasn't just fighting for his business. He was fighting for his family. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, as she sat in the darkness with Maddox's men watching her every move, she felt something she hadn't expected. Hope. Jaxon had promised to fight for what was his. Tomorrow night, she'd find out just how far he was willing to go.
Chapter 12. Tethered. The warehouse was silent, except for the distant sound of water lapping against the pier. Avery had been moved to a different room. Still windowless, still cold, but with a cot and a space heater that barely cut through the chill. Maddox was confident, she realized. He thought he'd already won. Nervous about tomorrow? He asked, appearing in the doorway with a cup of coffee that smelled like heaven and looked like mud. Should I be? Your boyfriend's walking into a trap. I'd be nervous. He's not my boyfriend. Right, just the father of your child? Maddox studied her face. Tell me something. What makes you think he won't just cut his losses? Men like us, we're practical. Sometimes the cost is too high.
You don't know him. I know enough. I know he lost a child before. I know it made him careful about attachments. Maddox's smile was cruel. I know he built his whole life around not caring too much about anything. The words hit closer to home than Avery wanted to admit. She'd seen Jaxon's walls, felt him pulling back whenever things got too real. But she'd also seen him with his hand on her stomach, protective and desperate. People change, she said. Do they? Or do they just hide their true nature better? Before she could answer, his phone rang. He answered with a sharp, "What?" She couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but she watched his expression change from confident to concerned to genuinely worried. "How many?" he asked. Then, "Are you sure?" And finally, "Double the guards, now." He hung up and looked at her with new respect. "Your boyfriend's been busy." "Told you." 3 of my warehouses hit simultaneously. My men captured or killed, my inventory seized. Maddox moved closer to her. "He's trying to force my hand. Or he's just getting started." Maddox's phone rang again. This time the conversation was shorter, but his face went pale. "What?" Avery asked. "He took my accountant, along with all my financial records." "Oops." "This isn't a game." "You started it." Maddox paced the small room like a caged animal. "He's supposed to be focused on saving you, not attacking me." "Maybe he can do both." "Not if I kill you first." The threat hung in the air between them. Avery felt fear crawl up her spine, but she kept her voice steady. "Then you lose your only leverage." "Maybe leverage isn't worth this much trouble." Before he could elaborate, gunfire erupted outside. Not the organized attack from earlier, but chaos. Shouts, running footsteps, the sound of men dying. Maddox drew his gun and moved to the door. "Stay here." "Like I have a choice." He disappeared into the hallway, leaving her alone with her racing heart and growing hope. The sounds of battle were getting closer, more intense. Someone was dismantling Maddox's operation piece by piece. The door opened, and she expected to see Maddox. Instead, Logan slipped inside, his face grim and his clothes bloody. "You okay?" he asked, cutting her restraints. "I'm fine. The baby?" "We'll check everything once we're out of here." He handed her a gun. "Can you use this?" "I don't know." "Point and shoot. Safety's off." "Where's Jaxon?" "Being Jaxon. Come on." They moved through corridors that reeked of gunpowder and fear. Bodies lay scattered. Maddox's men, taken down with surgical precision. Whatever Jaxon had planned, he'd executed it perfectly. They found him in what used to be Maddox's command center. The silver-haired man was on his knees, hands zip-tied behind his back, blood trickling from a cut on his forehead. Jaxon stood over him, looking like an avenging angel in an expensive suit. "Avery." He turned when he heard my footsteps, and the relief on his face was so profound, it took my breath away. "Are you hurt?" "I'm fine. The baby?" "We'll check everything once we're out of here." He handed her a gun. "Can you use this?" "I don't know. Point and shoot, safety's off." "Where's Jaxon?" "Being Jaxon. Come on." They moved through corridors that reeked of gunpowder and fear. Bodies lay scattered. Maddox's men, taken down with surgical precision. Whatever Jaxon had planned, he'd executed it perfectly.
They found him in what used to be Maddox's command center. The silver-haired man was on his knees, hands zip-tied behind his back, blood trickling from a cut on his forehead. Jaxon stood over him, looking like an avenging angel in an expensive suit. Avery. He turned when he heard my footsteps, and the relief on his face was so profound, it took my breath away. Are you hurt? I'm fine. He crossed to me in 3 quick strides, his hands immediately going to my face, my arms, my stomach, checking for injuries with desperate thoroughness. The baby? I think the baby's fine. He pulled me against him, holding me so tightly I could barely breathe. I felt him shaking, actually shaking, with relief or rage or both. I thought I'd lost you. He whispered against my hair. You didn't. When Logan called, when they said they'd taken you, his arms tightened. I wanted to burn the whole city down. Why didn't you? Because burning it down wouldn't get you back. He pulled away to look at me, his hands framing my face. Are you sure you're okay? I'm sure. He kissed me then, desperate and relieved, like he was confirming I was real. When we broke apart, his eyes were bright with unshed tears. How did you find me so fast? I never stopped looking. He glanced at Maddox, who was being watched by 2 of Jackson's men. Plus, he wasn't as careful as he thought. What happens now? Now he pays for touching what's mine. There was something final in his voice, something that made Maddox go very still. Jaxon.
Jaxon, Avery said quietly. Don't what? Don't become something you can't come back from. He studied her face. He kidnapped you, threatened our child, tried to destroy everything I've built. I know. He would have killed you after I gave him what he wanted. I know that too. Then why? Because our baby doesn't need a father who's a killer. Our baby needs a father who's alive to protect them. There are other ways. Jaxon looked at Maddox, then back at her. The war between justice and mercy played out in his expression. What do you suggest? He asked finally. Let the authorities handle it. You've got enough evidence to put him away forever. The authorities don't always work. Then make them work. He was quiet for a long moment, and she could see him wrestling with instincts that demanded blood for blood. Please, she said, for me, for our baby. Something in her voice reached him. He nodded slowly, then turned to Logan. Call Detective Morrison. Tell him we have a gift for him. Logan looked surprised, but pulled out his phone. Maddox sagged with relief that he probably didn't deserve. You're making a mistake. I'll find a way out. I'll come after you again. No, Jaxon said quietly. You won't. There was something in his tone that made Maddox pale. Not death, but something perhaps worse. Complete and total ruin. An hour later, police sirens filled the warehouse district. Maddox was led away in handcuffs, his organization dismantled, his assets frozen, his life effectively over. Jaxon and Avery sat in the back of his car, her head on his shoulder, his hand protectively covering her stomach. You saved his life. I saved yours. How do you figure? Because killing him would have changed you, and I need you to stay who you are. Who am I? She looked up at him. The man who gave up everything to save me and our baby. I didn't give up anything. I got everything back. What did you get back? What matters? You, our child, our future. The word our hit her like a physical thing. Not his future or her future, but theirs, together. I love you, she said quietly. The words slipped out before she could stop them. She expected him to tense, to pull away, to remind her about the contract and boundaries and all the reasons this was temporary. Instead, he kissed the top of her head. I love you too, he said simply. And for the first time since she'd signed her name to a contract that changed her life, Avery felt like she was exactly where she belonged. I'm scared of what I'm becoming. What are you becoming? Someone who can't imagine life without you. His arms tightened around her. Then don't. Outside the car windows, Chicago rolled past, the city where she'd lost everything and found something she hadn't known she was looking for. Not just love, but belonging. Not just safety, but home. The contract that had brought them together was still technically in effect, but it no longer mattered. What they'd built went deeper than legal obligations. They'd built a family, and families, she was learning, were worth fighting for.
Chapter 13. Blood on the Floor. 2 months after the warehouse incident, Avery's world had settled into something that felt almost normal. Her belly was starting to show, a small but undeniable curve that made Jackson's eyes soften every time he saw it. They'd moved to a penthouse in downtown Chicago. Safer, he said, with better sight lines and more controlled access. She was reading in the living room when the shouting started. "Sir, you need to get down." Logan's voice, sharp with urgency. Avery looked up from her book to see him burst through the front door, blood on his shirt and panic in his eyes. "What's happening?" "They hit the warehouse on 5th Street. Marcus is dead." The words hit Jaxon like a physical blow. Marcus had been with him for 8 years, one of the few people he trusted completely. Avery watched his face transform from peaceful to something cold and deadly. "How many?" His voice was eerily calm. "6 of our guys. They knew exactly when the shipment was coming in, exactly where to hit us." "Inside job?" "Has to be." Jaxon moved to the window, looking down at the street with predator's eyes. "Security footage." "Tommy's bringing it now." As summoned, another man appeared, young, nervous, carrying a laptop. Avery had met Tommy once before. He handled Jackson's digital operations, all computers and no violence. He looked like he might vomit. "Show me," Jaxon said. The laptop screen filled with grainy black and white footage from the warehouse. Avery moved closer, curious despite herself. She'd never seen Jackson's business in action before. The video showed men unloading trucks, normal warehouse activity. Then vehicles appeared, moving fast, coordinated. The attack was over in minutes, professional and brutal. "There," Logan pointed at the screen. "That's our guy." The camera had caught one of the attackers removing his mask. Avery didn't recognize the face, but Jackson's entire body went rigid. "Danny Torino," he said quietly. "You know him?" "He's been with me for 3 years. I promoted him last month." Jackson's voice was flat, emotionless. "Tommy, where is he now?" "Still at his apartment, far as we know. Want me to check?" "No, I'll handle this personally." Something in his tone made Avery's stomach clench. "Handle it how?" Jaxon didn't answer. He was already moving, pulling on his jacket, checking his gun with the casual efficiency of someone who'd done it 1,000 times. "Jaxon, wait!" He stopped, but didn't turn around. "What are you going to do?" "What needs to be done?" That's not an answer. He faced her then, and she was shocked by what she saw in his eyes. Not just anger, but something colder. Something that reminded her exactly who she'd fallen in love with. "Danny betrayed me, got 6 of my men killed, including Marcus. There are consequences for that." "Legal consequences?" "My consequences." The words hung in the air between them. Avery felt like she was seeing him clearly for the first time. Not the man who held her at night or put his hand on her belly to feel the baby kick, but the man who'd built an empire on fear and violence. "I'm coming with you," she said. "Absolutely not. If you're going to do what I think you're going to do, I need to see it. Avery, I need to understand who you really are." Jaxon steadied her face, and she saw him war with himself. "You don't want to see this." "Maybe not, but I need to." "Why?" "Because I'm carrying your child. Because I told you I loved you. Because if we're going to have a future, I need to know what that future looks like." He was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Stay in the car. No matter what happens, you stay in the car." Danny Torino lived in a modest apartment in Chinatown, the kind of place that screamed, "I'm trying not to draw attention." But as their convoy pulled up outside, it was clear that subtlety was no longer an option. "He's still inside," Logan reported. 2 exits, both covered. Jaxon checked his gun one more time. "Bring him to the warehouse on Pier 12, the empty one." "Why not just—" "Because I want to talk to him first." They found Danny trying to escape through the back window. He was young, maybe 25, with the kind of face that belonged in a college fraternity rather than Jackson's organization. When he saw them, he started crying. "Please, Mr. Reid, I can explain." "I'm sure you can." They drove to the warehouse in silence. Danny sat between 2 of Jackson's men, tears streaming down his face, begging for mercy that wasn't coming. Avery watched from the front seat, her hand unconsciously resting on her belly. The warehouse was empty except for one chair in the middle of the concrete floor. Danny was forced into it, his hands zip-tied behind his back. "Why?" Jaxon asked simply. "They have my sister. Maddox's people. They said they'd kill her if I didn't help them." "So you got 6 of my men killed instead?" "I didn't know they were going to kill anybody. They said it was just a robbery." Jaxon circled the chair like a shark. "Marcus had 2 kids. Did you know that?" "Mr. Reid, please." "Tommy was getting married next month." "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." "Sorry doesn't bring them back." Jaxon pulled out his gun. Danny's sobs echoed in the empty space. "Please, I'll do anything. I'll work for you for free. You'll die." The gunshot was deafeningly loud in the concrete space. Danny's body slumped forward, blood pooling on the floor beneath the chair. Avery stared through the car window, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might burst. She'd known, intellectually, what Jaxon was capable of, but seeing it, the casual way he ended a life, the complete lack of emotion on his face, made it real in a way that terrified her. When he walked back to the car, he was the same man who left. No blood on his clothes, no tremor in his hands, no sign that he'd just killed someone. "Drive," he told Logan. They rode in silence. Avery stared out the window at the Chicago streets, trying to process what she'd witnessed. When they reached the penthouse, Jaxon finally spoke. "Are you going to be sick?" "I don't know." "You wanted to see who I really am." "I did." "And now you have." She looked at him, this man who'd saved her mother, protected her, loved her, and 5 minutes ago had put a bullet in someone's head without blinking. "I don't know what to think," she said honestly. "Think about Marcus's kids, who won't see their father again. Think about the fact that Danny's betrayal could have gotten you killed too." His voice was matter-of-fact. "Think about whether you can live with loving someone who does what's necessary to protect what's his. Is that what you call it? Necessary? What would you call it?" She didn't have an answer. In the abstract, she could understand his logic. Danny had betrayed them, people had died, there had to be consequences. But understanding and accepting were different things. "I need time to think." "How much time?" "I don't know." He nodded like he'd expected this. "I'll stay at the office tonight. Give you space." Jaxon, you saw what you needed to see. Now you need to decide if you to live with it. He kissed her forehead, gentle and careful, like she might break. Then he left, taking his security detail with him. Avery sat alone in the penthouse, one hand on her growing belly, trying to reconcile the man who touched her so tenderly with the one who'd killed Danny Torino without hesitation. The baby kicked, strong and insistent, and she realized with growing horror that this child would grow up in Jaxon's world, would learn that violence was sometimes the answer, that loyalty was enforced with bullets, that love and brutality could exist in the same person. What kind of mother was she to bring a child into this? What kind of woman was she to love a man capable of such coldness? Outside her windows, Chicago glittered in the darkness, beautiful and dangerous and full of secrets. Somewhere in the city, two families were grieving. Marcus's family for a man killed doing his job. Danny's family for a man killed doing the wrong thing. And somewhere else, Jaxon was probably planning his next move, making sure his enemies knew what happened to people who crossed him. The man she loved was a killer. The question was whether she could live with that truth or whether it would destroy everything they'd built together. The baby kicked again, as if reminding her that the choice wasn't just about her anymore. It was about all of them.
Chapter 14. Choices. Avery didn't sleep. She sat by the window all night, watching the city and thinking about blood on concrete floors. When dawn broke over Lake Michigan, she still didn't have answers. Her phone buzzed at 8 a.m., Dr. Martinez from the hospital. "Miss Quinn, I have good news. Your mother is being discharged today. Her recovery has been remarkable." The words should have filled her with joy. Instead, they created a new kind of panic. Her mother was getting better, which meant questions. Questions about where Avery had been, how she'd paid for the surgery, why she was living in a penthouse instead of the tiny apartment Linda remembered. Questions Avery couldn't answer without destroying her mother's image of her forever. "That's wonderful," she managed. "When can I pick her up?" "This afternoon, around 2. Avery hung up and immediately called Jaxon. He answered on the first ring like he'd been waiting. "How are you?" His voice was careful, controlled. "My mother's being discharged today." "That's good news." "Is it? Because I have no idea how to explain any of this to her." A pause. "What do you want to tell her?" "The truth? That I signed a contract to have a baby with a man I barely knew because I was desperate? That I watched him kill someone last night, and I don't know if I can live with that?" "Avery." Or should I lie? Make up some story about a boyfriend she's never met? Pretend this is all normal and happy? What would make this easier for you? The question caught her off guard. Not what was best for him or what protected his interests, but what would make her life easier. "I don't know," she admitted. "I have a suggestion." "I'm listening." "There's a facility in Arizona, recovery center, but more like a resort. She could finish her physical therapy there, get stronger, have time to adjust before seeing how much your life has changed." "You want to send my mother away?" "I want to give you time to figure out what you want to tell her, and I want to make sure she's safe." "Safe from what?" "From the consequences of loving you." The words hit her like a slap. What's that supposed to mean? "It means people will use her to get to you, and you to get to me. It means the safest place for her is somewhere no one can find her." Avery closed her eyes. Another choice, another sacrifice. First her freedom, then her body, now her relationship with her mother. "How long?" she asked. "As long as it takes." "For what?" "For you to decide who you want to be." Linda Quinn looked fragile in the hospital bed,
but her eyes were bright and alert for the first time in months. When she saw Avery, her face lit up with pure joy. "Sweetheart, you look wonderful. Different, but wonderful." "Different how?" "I don't know. Healthier, like someone's taking good care of you." If only she knew just how true that was. "How are you feeling, Mom?" "Like I've been hit by a truck, but grateful to be alive." Linda squeezed her hand. "The doctor said you paid for everything. Honey, how did you manage that? That surgery must have cost—" "Don't worry about it." "But the money is handled. All of it." Linda studied her daughter's face. "There's something you're not telling me." There were a lot of things she wasn't telling her, like the baby growing in her belly, or the man who owned her heart and had blood on his hands, or the fact that her life had become something Linda wouldn't recognize. "I got a new job," Avery said carefully. "Good benefits." "What kind of job?" "Administrative work. For a businessman." It wasn't entirely a lie. She was administrating the growth of Jaxon's heir, and he was definitely a businessman. "Well, whoever he is, he must value you highly to provide this kind of medical coverage." "He does. I'd like to meet him sometime." "Maybe. But first, we need to focus on getting you better." She told her mother about the Arizona facility, presenting it as a luxury her new employer's insurance provided. Linda was hesitant at first, but the promise of warm weather and specialized therapy won her over. "I just feel bad leaving you alone." "I won't be alone." "This new job keeping you busy?" "Very busy." "And your boss? He's good to you?" Avery thought about gentle hands on her face and cold eyes watching a man die. "He's protective." "Good. You deserve someone who takes care of you." The transport to Arizona was arranged for the next morning. Jaxon's people, of course, although they looked like medical personnel. Professional, discreet, expensive. Avery hugged her mother goodbye in the hospital lobby, trying not to cry. "I'll call you every day." "You better." "And Avery, whatever this new life is, I'm proud of you. You saved us both." If only it were that simple. Jaxon was waiting in the penthouse when she returned. He'd been gone for 2 days to give her space to think, but he looked like he had aged years in that time. "How did it go?" "She's on her way to Arizona. Happy, healthy, completely unaware that her daughter is pregnant with the crime boss's baby." "Is that what's bothering you? The lies?" "Part of it. And the other part?" "The other part is that I'm starting to understand why you do what you do, and that terrifies me." "Explain." "Danny betrayed you. People died because of that betrayal. In any other context, he'd be arrested, tried, probably spend life in prison. But you don't have that luxury, do you? You can't call the police when someone murders your employees." "No, I can't." "So you handle it yourself?" "Yes." "And if word got out that you'd gone soft, that betrayal didn't have consequences, how many more people would try the same thing?" "Too many." "How many more people would die?" "A lot more than one." She nodded, hating that his logic made sense. "That's what terrifies me. Not that you killed him, but that I understand why you had to." "Does understanding make it easier?" "It makes it harder. Because if I can rationalize murder, what else can I rationalize? What kind of person does that make me?" "It makes you someone who loves me enough to see past your own moral comfort." "Is that good or bad?" "I don't know." The honesty in his voice surprised her. She expected him to tell her it was necessary, that she'd adjust, that love conquered all. Instead, he looked as lost as she felt. "What happens now?"
she asked. Now you decide. Stay or go. Love me or leave me. Accept what I am or walk away. And if I walk away, then you get everything I promised you. Money, security, freedom. Your mother stays safe in Arizona, the baby gets the best of everything, and you never have to see me again. What do you get? My child, and the knowledge that I didn't destroy someone I loved.
The words hung between them like a bridge and a chasm. Cross over or fall through. What if I stay? Then you become part of this world, really part of it. The violence, the danger, the constant threat. But also the protection, the power, the family. Family? You, me, our child, my people. It's not conventional, but it's real. Avery looked around the penthouse. Beautiful, expensive, safe. A gilded cage that had become something more. Home. I'm scared, she said. Of me? Of who I'm becoming? Of what I'm willing to accept for love? What are you willing to accept? She thought about her mother, safe and happy in Arizona. About the baby growing inside her, who would never want for anything. About Jaxon, who'd given up everything to save her and would probably do it again. More than I ever thought possible. He moved to sit beside her, close enough to touch, but not touching. And that scares you? It should scare me more than it does. But it doesn't? No. What scares me is the thought of trying to live without you, even knowing what I am, especially knowing what you are. He reached for her hand then, threading their fingers together. I can't promise I'll never have to do something like that again. I know. I can't promise your hands will stay clean if you stay with me. What do you mean? I mean, someday you might have to make the same choice I made. Someone threatens our child, our family. What would you do? The question hit her like ice water, because she already knew the answer, and it terrified her. Anything, she whispered. Anything. Anything necessary. He lifted their joined hands and kissed her knuckles. Then you understand. I understand that love makes monsters of us. Or it makes us human. She looked at him. This beautiful, dangerous man who'd shown her parts of herself she'd never known existed. What's the difference? Monsters don't care about the cost. Humans do. Do you care? Every day, every choice, every consequence. His thumb traced over her engagement ring finger, bare except for the simple band he'd given her to wear in public. But I care about you more. Show me. How? She pulled his hand to her belly, where their child was growing. Teach me to be strong enough for this world, all of it. His eyes darkened. Are you sure? No, but I'm choosing you anyway. When he kissed her, it tasted like promises and danger and a future she couldn't fully imagine, but was ready to build. Outside the windows, Chicago hummed with life and death and all the messy complications of both. Somewhere in the city, people were making the same choice she'd just made, choosing love over safety, passion over peace, family over everything else. She was about to become someone new, someone harder, more dangerous, more capable of terrible things. But she was also about to become someone who belonged completely, loved fiercely, and protected what mattered with everything she had. The transformation had already begun. There was no going back now. Chapter 15. Confrontation. The fight started over something stupid. Avery was reading an article on her laptop, a news piece about a charity gala she'd seen advertised, when Jaxon looked over her shoulder and frowned. "You can't go to that," he said. "I wasn't planning to. I was just reading." "Good. Too many people, too public, not safe." "I said I wasn't going. I'm just making sure you understand why." Something in his tone, casual, dismissive, like he was explaining obvious facts to a child, made her snap.
I understand perfectly. I can't go anywhere, do anything, or see anyone without your permission. That's not, isn't it? She closed the laptop harder than necessary. When's the last time I made a decision about my own life? You make decisions every day. Like what? What to eat from the menu you approve, what to wear from the clothes you bought, where to go with the security you assigned. Her voice was rising, months of frustration finally finding an outlet. Those aren't decisions, Jaxon. Those are illusions of choice. He moved to the window, hands clasped behind his back, his thinking pose. This is about your safety. This is about your control. Same thing. No, it's not. She stood up, pacing behind him. Safety would be reasonable precautions. Control is what you do. Manage every aspect of my life like I'm a possession instead of a person. You're carrying my child. I'm carrying our child. There's a difference. He turned to face her, and she saw something flash in his eyes. Surprise, maybe even hurt. Of course it's our child. Then treat me like a partner, not a walking incubator. I've never. Haven't you? You decide where I live, who I see, where I go. You monitor my diet, my exercise, my schedule. You sent my mother away without asking what I wanted. You agreed to Arizona because you made it sound like the only safe option. But was it, or was it just the most convenient option for you? The question hung in the air between them. Jaxon's jaw tightened, and she knew she'd hit something true. Your mother is safer in Arizona, he said, finally. That's not what I asked. What do you want me to say? I want you to tell me the truth, all of it. The truth about what? About why you really sent her away, about why you need to control everything I do, about what you're so afraid of that you have to micromanage my entire existence. He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. I'm afraid of losing you. So you control me? So I protect you. From what? From everything. Everyone. From making choices that could get you killed. Like what choices? Like trusting the wrong person? Like going somewhere without security? Like thinking you're safe when you're not? Like being normal? Normal gets you dead in my world. But it's my choice to make. No. His voice was sharp, final. It's not. The words hit her like a slap. She stared at him, seeing clearly for the first time the cage he'd built around her. Beautiful, comfortable, absolutely inescapable. You replaced my entire life, she said quietly. I saved your life. You replaced it. My apartment, my job, my daily routine, my relationships. Everything I was, you erased and rebuilt according to your specifications. For your own good. According to you. Yes, according to me. Because I know things you don't. Because I see threats you can't. Because keeping you alive is more important than keeping you happy. What if I'd rather be happy? Then you'd be dead. You don't know that. I know enough. She moved closer to him, close enough to see the strain in his face, the way his hands clenched at his sides. What are you so afraid of, Jaxon? Really? I told you. No, you told me the acceptable answer. What's the real one? He looked at her for a long moment, and she saw him wrestling with something deep and painful. I'm afraid that if I give you choices, you'll choose to leave. The raw honesty in his voice stopped her cold. What? I'm afraid that if you have real freedom, real options, you'll realize you don't need me, that you can do better than this life, better than me. So you make sure I don't have options? I make sure you're safe. You make sure I'm trapped. Same thing. No, it's not. And if you can't see the difference, then maybe I should leave. Fear flashed across his face. Real, genuine terror. Avery, I'm serious. Maybe I should take my money, take our baby, and go somewhere you can't find me. Somewhere I can make my own choices, even if they're the wrong ones. You can't. Watch me. She moved toward the bedroom, not sure what she was planning, but needing to do something, anything that felt like agency. He caught her arm. Don't. Give me a reason not to. The baby needs a mother who isn't a prisoner.
You're not a prisoner. Prove it. How? Give me a choice, a real one, something that matters.
He stared at her, and she could see him calculating, weighing options, trying to find a way to give her what she wanted without losing control. What kind of choice? Any kind. Something in my life that's actually mine to decide. He was quiet for a long time. Then he walked to his desk, opened a drawer, and pulled out a small silver key. He held it out to her. What's this? The key to the safe in the bedroom closet. What's in the safe? Everything. Passports, yours and one for the baby when it's born. Cash, enough to disappear completely if you want to. Bank account information for money I can't touch that's entirely yours. She stared at the key, hardly daring to believe what he was offering. You're giving me a way out? I'm giving you a choice. Why? Because you're right. I have been controlling you. I have been treating you like a possession instead of a partner. He placed the key in her palm and closed her fingers around it. I told myself it was for your protection, but that was only part of it. What was the other part? The other part was that I needed you to need me. I needed to be necessary to your survival, so you'd never want to leave. The admission hung between them like a confession. Avery felt the weight of the key in her hand, cool metal that represented freedom, choice, the power to walk away from everything they'd built. And now, she asked, now I'm hoping you'll choose to stay because you want to, not because you have to. What if I don't? Pain flashed across his face. Then I'll have to live with that. You won't try to stop me? I'll want to. Every instinct I have will tell me to lock you up, hide you away, make sure you can't leave. He touched her face with gentle fingers. But I won't, because you're right. If you stay, it has to be your choice. She looked down at the key, then back at his face. What changes if I stay? Everything. No more decisions made for you, no more controlling your every move. We become partners, really become partners, or we don't survive this. And if we don't survive, then at least we try to do it right. The key felt warm now in her palm, and she realized she was crying. I don't want to leave, but you could. But I don't want to. She looked up at him. I want to stay and fight with you and make terrible choices and live dangerously and raise our baby in this insane world we've built. Even knowing what that means, especially knowing what it means. What does it mean? It means I'm choosing you, not because I have to, not because I'm trapped, but because I want this life, our life, all of it. Relief flooded his face, followed quickly by something that looked like wonder. You're sure? I'm terrified and probably making a huge mistake, but yes, I'm sure. He kissed her then, desperate and grateful, like she'd just given him something he thought was lost forever. What do we do now? She asked against his mouth. Now we figure out how to be partners instead of captor and captive. Think we can do it? I think we have to try. She held up the key. What should I do with this? Keep it, always, so you always have a choice. What if I never use it? Then you'll never use it, but you'll always have it. She slipped the key into her pocket, and for the first time since she'd signed the contract that changed her life, she felt truly free. Not because she could leave, but because she was choosing to stay. Jaxon? Yeah. Next time you want to send my mother to Arizona, ask me first. His smile was rueful. Deal. And next time you think about making decisions about my life without including me, I'll remember that you have a key, and I'd rather keep you here willingly. Good. Good. Outside the windows, Chicago sprawled in all directions, dangerous, beautiful, full of choices and consequences. They stood together, looking out at it, no longer captor and captive, controller and controlled, partners. It was going to be complicated, messy, probably impossible some days, but it was going to be theirs.
Chapter 16. The Turn. The changes started small. The next morning, Jaxon asked her what she wanted for breakfast instead of having it prepared already. When Logan appeared for the daily security briefing, Jaxon looked at her first. Do you want to hear this, or would you prefer privacy? It was such a simple question, but it represented everything that had been missing. Choice, agency, the basic respect of being consulted about her own life. I want to hear it, she said. Logan's eyebrows lifted slightly, but he continued without comment. 3 potential threats identified overnight. 1 credible, 2 nuisance level. Increased patrols around the building. Modified route to Dr. Chen's office this afternoon. What's the credible threat? Avery asked. Logan glanced at Jaxon, who nodded. Vincent Maddox's nephew, recently released from county lockup, making noise about revenge. How credible? He's an idiot with a big mouth and daddy's money, but idiots with money can still be dangerous. Avery absorbed this information, filing it away. 3 months ago, she would have been terrified. Now she found herself thinking tactically. What did this mean for their security, their movements, their plans? When had she started thinking like this? What's our response? She asked. Our response? Logan looked genuinely surprised. She's part of this now. All of it, Jaxon said quietly. Surveillance first. See if he's just talking or if he's actually planning something. If it's the latter, we'll handle it before it becomes a problem. Handle it how? However necessary. The casual acceptance of violence should have bothered her more than it did. Maybe she was adapting too well to this world. After Logan left, Jaxon poured himself coffee and sat across from her at the kitchen table. Regrets? He asked. About what? About choosing to hear the briefing, about being part of this. She considered the question seriously. No, I'd rather know what we're facing than live in ignorant bliss. Even if knowing makes you complicit? I've been complicit since the moment I signed that contract. At least now I'm complicit by choice. He smiled, but there was something sad in it. You're changing. Is that bad? I don't know. You're becoming harder, more calculating. The woman I met at the club would have been horrified by this conversation. The woman you met at the club was desperate and naive. This woman is carrying your baby and learning to survive in your world. Do you miss her? The woman you were before? She thought about it. The old Avery was innocent, trusting, completely unprepared for the realities of loving a dangerous man. She'd also been powerless, dependent, afraid of her own shadow. Sometimes, she said honestly, but I like who I'm becoming better. Even if who you are becoming isn't entirely good? Good is a luxury I can't afford anymore. And that doesn't scare you. Everything scares me, but being weak scares me more. He reached across the table and took her hand. I never wanted this for you. What did you want? I wanted you safe, protected, untouched by the worst parts of this life. That was never going to be possible. I know that now. Do you regret it? Making me part of this? I regret a lot of things, but having you here, having our baby, having something worth protecting, he squeezed her hand. No, I don't regret that. They sat in comfortable silence, morning light streaming through the windows. It felt peaceful, domestic. Normal if you ignored the guns their security carried and the fact that they'd just discussed potential murder over coffee. I want to see your business, Avery said suddenly. What? Your office, your operations, the legitimate stuff. I want to understand what you do when you're not protecting me. I'm not asking to sit in on drug deals or weapon sales. I want to see the legal side, the business side. If I'm going to be your partner, I should understand what we're partnering in. He studied her face. You're serious. Dead serious. It's not exciting. Most of it is just paperwork and meetings. I like paperwork and meetings. You like order. I like understanding things. And right now, half your life is a mystery to me. He considered this. There's a board meeting this afternoon. Import-export company, completely legitimate. You could sit in if you want. I want. It'll be boring. I'll survive. The Reid Industries building was everything she'd expected. Gleaming, modern, impressive.
Jackson's office occupied the entire top floor, with views of the city that made her feel like they were ruling it from above. "This is where you work?" she asked, running her fingers along his massive desk. "Some of the time, when I'm not handling other business." Other business being the illegal kind, she understood. But this office, this building, this entire legitimate empire, it was impressive in its own right. The board meeting was exactly as boring as he'd promised. Import, schedules, shipping contracts, quarterly projections. But watching Jaxon work was fascinating. He was commanding, intelligent, completely in control. These people respected him, maybe even feared him a little, but they also trusted his judgment completely. "You're good at this," she said afterwards as they rolled the elevator back to his office. "At what?" "At leading, making decisions, being someone people follow. It's not that different from the other work." "Isn't it?" Power is power. Whether you're running a boardroom or running the streets, it's about reading people, making smart choices, and following through on your threats. And your promises? Those too. Back in his office, she wandered to the windows while he returned phone calls. The city spread out below them, millions of people living their lives, unaware that their existence was being negotiated and protected and sometimes decided by men like Jaxon. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, finishing his last call. "How strange this all is. 6 months ago, I was nobody, a broke girl with a dying mother and no prospects. Now I'm standing in a billionaire's office, pregnant with his baby, planning a life I never could have imagined." "Do you miss being nobody?" "Sometimes. Nobody had simpler problems. But nobody didn't have this." He moved to stand behind her, his arms coming around her waist and his fingers settling over their growing baby. "This? This view, this life, this family we're building." She leaned back against him, feeling the solid warmth of his body, the steady beat of his heart. Nobody, definitely, didn't have this. He turned her in his arms, and when he looked at her, she saw something different in his eyes. Not possession or control or even protection. Just love. Pure and simple and uncomplicated by contracts or obligations. "I love you," he said, like it was the first time he'd ever said it. "I love you too. Not because you have to, not because I saved your mother or gave you money or got you pregnant. No, because of who you are. All of who you are. Even the dark parts, especially the dark parts." When he kissed her, it was different from all the kisses that had come before. Not careful or controlled or clinically timed, just two people who'd found something worth fighting for in each other. Afterwards, as they lay on the leather couch in his office, her head on his chest and his fingers tracing patterns on her back, she realized they'd crossed some invisible line. They weren't playing roles anymore. The desperate girl and the cold businessman, the contract bride and the controlling husband. They were just Avery and Jaxon. Two complicated people building something complicated and beautiful, and probably doomed. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now we figure out how to make this work." "Think we can?" "I think we have to." "That's not the same thing." "No, but it's enough for now." Outside the windows, Chicago hummed with life and danger and possibility. Somewhere in the city, enemies were planning and allies were watching, and the world was spinning toward whatever came next. But in that moment, in that office, with his heartbeat steady beneath her ear and their baby growing between them, Avery felt something she hadn't felt in months. Peace. It probably wouldn't last. Their world was too dangerous, their love too complicated, their future too uncertain for lasting peace. But for now, it was enough. They were enough. "Jaxon? Thank you." "For what?" "For giving me the key. for giving me the choice. Thank you for staying. Thank you for being worth staying for." He held her tighter, and she closed her eyes, listening to the sound of his breathing, feeling the rise and fall of his chest. Tomorrow would bring new threats, new choices, new complications.
Chapter 17. The Attack. The meeting was supposed to be neutral territory. Jaxon left at 7 p.m. for what he called diplomacy, a sit-down with 3 other organization heads to discuss territory disputes and shipping conflicts, the kind of meeting that happened in expensive restaurants with excellent security and unspoken rules about violence. "It's just talking," he assured Avery as he adjusted his tie. "Boring stuff. I'll be back by 10. Famous last words. "Hey," he kissed her forehead. "No one's stupid enough to break neutrality at Romano's. It would be suicide." "I still don't like it." "Logan will be with me, plus 8 other guys. It's overkill for a dinner meeting." She watched him leave from the penthouse windows, counting the black SUVs as they pulled away. 3 vehicles, enough firepower to start a small war. For a dinner meeting. That should have been her first clue. At 8:30, she was reading in bed when her phone buzzed with a news alert. "Breaking, shooting at Romano's restaurant, multiple casualties reported." Her blood turned to ice. She grabbed the remote and turned on the news, channel surfing until she found a live feed. The scene was chaos. Police cars, ambulances, news vans creating a carnival of flashing lights outside the elegant restaurant. At least 6 people confirmed dead in what appears to be a coordinated attack on the popular downtown establishment. Police sources indicate this may be gang-related. The phone slipped from her numbed fingers. 6 people dead. Jaxon was in there. Had been in there when the shooting started. She called his phone, straight to voicemail. Logan's phone, same thing. The landline to his office, nothing. And witnesses described men in masks entering through multiple entrances simultaneously. The attack lasted approximately 4 minutes before the perpetrators fled the scene. 4 minutes? A professional hit? Quick and clean. Someone had planned this carefully, waited for the perfect moment when all their targets would be in one place. Her hand shook as she tried calling the hospital. "I'm looking for someone who might have been brought in from Romano's restaurant, Jaxon Reid." "I'm sorry, I can't give out patient information over the phone." "I'm his wife." "You'll need to come in with proper identification." She hung up and called another hospital. Same response. A third, nothing. On the TV, the reporter was still talking, but the words blurred together. All she could see was the restaurant, dark windows, and police tape, and the knowledge that Jaxon was somewhere in that chaos, possibly bleeding, possibly dying, possibly already dead. Her phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello? Avery, it's Tommy. Don't talk, just listen. Mr. Reid is alive, but he's hurt. Logan's in surgery. 3 of our guys didn't make it." "Where is he?" "I can't say over the phone, but he's asking for you." "Where?" "The safe house on Wacker Street. You know the one." She did. Jaxon had shown it to her weeks ago. A nondescript building with a medical facility hidden in the basement, the kind of place you went when hospitals asked too many questions. "I'm coming." "No, he specifically said to keep you away. It's too dangerous." "I don't care." "Avery, listen to me. The people who did this, they're still out there. They might be watching you, waiting to see if you lead them to him." "Then I'll be careful." "It's not safe." She hung up. For about 30 seconds, she considered obeying orders, staying in the penthouse, waiting for news, letting other people handle the crisis. The old Avery would have done exactly that.
But the old Avery wouldn't have been carrying the child of Chicago's most dangerous man. The old Avery wouldn't have learned to think tactically, to assess threats, to choose courage over safety. The old Avery wouldn't have a key in her pocket that represented the power to choose. She got dressed quickly. Dark clothes, comfortable shoes, the kind of outfit that wouldn't stand out. She found the gun that Jaxon had insisted she learn to use, checked that it was loaded, and tucked it into her waistband. Driving through Chicago at night, 7 months pregnant and armed, heading toward a man who might be dying, she realized how far she had traveled from the desperate girl that answered a job listing for Club Inferno. That girl had been looking for salvation. This woman was about to provide it. The safe house looked exactly like what it was, a rundown office building in an area where no one asked questions. But Avery knew that appearances were deceiving. Behind the grimy windows and peeling paint was a fortress. She parked 2 blocks away and walked, keeping to the shadows, watching for surveillance. The streets were quieter here, fewer cameras, more places to hide. Perfect for people who needed to disappear. The back entrance was where Tommy had told her it would be. She knocked twice, paused, knocked 3 times. The door opened to reveal a man she didn't recognize. Young, nervous, with blood on his shirt. "You're Avery?" "Yes." "You shouldn't be here." "So everyone keeps telling me. Where is he?" "Downstairs, but ma'am, it's not good." Her heart stuttered, but she kept her voice steady. "How not good?" "2 bullets. 1 in the shoulder, 1 in the side. The doctor's working on him now." "Is he conscious?" "In and out." "Take me to him." The basement was a fully equipped medical facility, cleaner and better equipped than some hospital emergency rooms. A doctor she didn't recognize was bent over a table where Jaxon lay unconsciously, his chest rising and falling with mechanical regularity. There was so much blood. "How is he?" she asked. The doctor looked up, clearly surprised to see her. "Stable, but it was close. The bullet in his side nicked an artery. If they had gotten him here 10 minutes later..." She moved to the table, her hand finding Jackson's where it lay at his side. His skin was cold, pale, but his pulse was strong under her fingers. "When will he wake up?" "Soon. The anesthesia is wearing off." As if summoned by her voice, Jackson's eyes fluttered open. It took him a moment to focus, but when he saw her, panic flashed across his face. "What the hell are you doing here?" "Nice to see you too." "I told Tommy to keep you away. Tommy's not the boss of me. I am." "No, you're not. Remember? We had a whole conversation about that." Despite everything, he almost smiled. "You disobeyed a direct order." "I came to save your ass." "My ass is fine." "Your ass has 2 bullet holes in it. Technically, 1 bullet hole is in my shoulder. Don't get smart with me while you're bleeding." The doctor cleared his throat. "I need to finish cleaning the wounds. This reunion is heartwarming, but infection is still a concern." Avery squeezed Jackson's hand. "I'll be right here." "You need to leave, now. If they followed you..." "They didn't. You can't know that. I was careful." "Careful isn't good enough when people are trying to kill me." "Which is exactly why I'm here." Before he could argue further, footsteps pounded down the stairs. Tommy appeared, his face white with panic. "We've got a problem. 3 cars just pulled up outside. They found us." The room exploded into motion. The doctor continued working while men grabbed weapons and moved to defensive positions. I heard the sound of windows breaking upstairs, heavy footsteps on the floor above. "How many men do we have?" Jaxon asked, trying to sit up despite the doctor's protest. 8 with the including. "They'll have more." "Probably." Gunfire erupted above us, muffled by the floor but clearly intense. Avery found herself thinking tactically. They were trapped in a basement with limited exits and a man who could barely move. "Is there another way out?"
Tunnel to the building next door, but it's narrow, hard to defend. Better than staying here and getting surrounded. More gunfire, closer now, the sound of boots on stairs. We need to move, Jaxon said, struggling to stand. You can't walk. I can walk. He proved it by taking 3 unsteady steps before nearly collapsing. Avery caught him, her arm around his waist, feeling the warmth of fresh blood through his shirt. Tunnel. Now. They moved as a group, Tommy leading, 2 men behind him, then Avery and Jaxon, with the doctor and remaining security bringing up the rear. The tunnel was exactly as cramped as promised, barely wide enough for 2 people side by side. They were halfway through when the shooting stopped. That's not good, Tommy muttered. Why not? Either they killed all our guys or they're regrouping for something bigger. As if to prove his point, an explosion rocked the building behind them, the tunnel filled with dust and debris, and Avery felt the ceiling shift ominously above their heads. Move faster, Jaxon said through gritted teeth. They emerged into another basement, this one clearly abandoned. No medical equipment, no comfortable lighting, just concrete and shadows, and the smell of decay.
Where are we? Avery asked. Old warehouse. Should be safe for... The door at the top of the stairs exploded inward. Men in tactical gear poured through, moving with military precision. Professional killers, not street thugs. Down! Tommy shouted. Gunfire filled the basement, deafeningly loud in the enclosed space. Avery dragged Jaxon behind a concrete pillar, feeling bullets spark off the walls around them. This was planned, Jaxon said, his face gray with pain and effort. They knew about the tunnel. Inside job? Has to be. One of their men went down, then another. They were outnumbered and outgunned, trapped in a basement with no exits except the stairs currently occupied by people trying to kill them. Through the chaos, Avery saw a figure moving through the smoke, tall, confident, completely unafraid of the bullets flying around him. When he stepped into a patch of light, she recognized him. Vincent Maddox's nephew, the credible threat Logan had mentioned that morning. He saw Jaxon at the same moment she saw him. Their eyes met across the basement, and she watched him raise his gun with deliberate precision. Time slowed. She saw the gun aimed at Jaxon's head, saw his finger tighten on the trigger, saw the moment when revenge would finally be served. She didn't think. She moved. Stepping out from behind the pillar, directly into the line of fire, her hands spread wide to protect the man behind her. No! The nephew's eyes widened in surprise. The gun was still pointed at her, but his finger had frozen on the trigger. Are you going to kill a pregnant woman? She asked, her voice carrying clearly across the basement. The gunfire around them faltered, then stopped entirely. Even killers, apparently, had lines they wouldn't cross. Move, he said. No. I'm not here for you. Move and you'll live. I'm not moving. He's a killer, a criminal. He deserves to die. Maybe, but not today. Not while I'm here to stop it. You can't stop anything. Watch me. They stared at each other across the dusty basement. A desperate woman protecting the father of our child, and a man with a gun who suddenly wasn't sure what he was willing to do to get his revenge. Behind her, she felt Jaxon trying to stand, trying to push her aside. She stepped back, keeping him covered, her hands still spread wide. Last chance, the nephew said, for both of us. The standoff stretched, seconds feeling like hours. Then sirens filled the air outside. Police, finally responding to the restaurant shooting, following the trail of violence across the city. The nephew's men looked nervous. Professional killers they might be, but police attention was always bad for business. This isn't over, he said, lowering his gun. Yes, it is, Avery said quietly, because next time you won't have the element of surprise. Next time, we'll be ready. We. He stared at her for another moment, then gestured to his men.
They retreated up the stairs, leaving behind their dead and their wounded and the knowledge that they'd failed to complete their mission. In the sudden silence, Avery turned to find Jaxon staring at her with an expression she'd never seen before. "You stood in front of a gun," he said. "Yes. For me. For us. For our family. You could have been killed. So could you. That's different." "No, it's not." He pulled her against him with his good arm, holding her tight despite the pain it must have caused. She could feel him shaking, whether from blood loss or emotion, she couldn't tell. "You're insane," he whispered against her hair. "I'm learning from the best. I love you. I love you too. Don't ever do that again. Don't give me a reason to." Outside, the sirens were getting closer. Soon this building would be crawling with police, and they'd need to have explanations ready. But for this moment, in this basement, that reeked of gunpowder and fear, they held each other and marveled at the fact that they were both still alive. "We need to go," Tommy said quietly. "Where?" Avery asked. "Safe house number 3. The one even I don't know about unless something like this happens." "How many safe houses do you have?" Jaxon asked Avery. "Enough." "For what?" "For nights like this." As they prepared to move again, Avery realized that something fundamental had changed. Not just about their relationship, but about her. The woman who'd stepped in front of that gun wasn't the desperate girl who'd signed a contract for money. She was someone new, someone harder, more dangerous, more willing to fight for what mattered. Someone who belonged in Jaxon's world, not as a victim or a possession, but as an equal partner in whatever came next. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, as she helped Jaxon walk toward whatever safety they could find, she felt something that surprised her. Power. She was no longer someone who needed protection. She was someone who could provide it.
Chapter 18. Reclaiming the Throne. Recovery was supposed to be quiet. Doctor's orders were clear: bed rest for at least a week, no stress, limited movement until the stitches healed. Jaxon was supposed to lie still and let his body heal while other people handled his business. That lasted exactly 18 hours. "I need to make some calls," he said from the bed in safe house number 3, trying to reach for his phone with the good arm. "No." Avery moved the phone out of his reach. "You need to rest. People are going to think I'm weak, dead maybe. If I don't show strength now, then I'll show it for you." He stared at her like she'd suggested flying to the moon. "What?" "You heard me. I'll handle whatever needs handling until you're back on your feet." "Avery, you don't understand. This isn't some corporate board meeting. These are dangerous people with dangerous problems." "So, teach me." "Teach you what?" "How to be you." The idea was insane. She knew it, he knew it, probably everyone in the room knew it. But as they sat there in the aftermath of the attack that had nearly killed them both, Avery felt something crystallizing inside her. She was tired of being protected, tired of being the liability, the weakness, the thing that needed to be kept safe. She wanted to be the strength. "One meeting. Let me handle one small thing while you recover. If I screw it up, I'll never ask again. And if you don't screw it up, then we figure out what comes next." Jaxon was quiet for a long moment, studying her face. "There's a warehouse manager who's been skimming from shipments. Small-time stuff, but it needs addressing." "How do you normally address it?" "Depends how reasonable he is. And if he's not reasonable, then he learns why that's a bad choice." 2 days later, Avery sat across from Danny Walsh, no relation to Tiffany, thankfully, in a coffee shop on the South Side. He was nervous, sweating despite the air conditioning, clearly wondering why he was meeting with the pregnant woman instead of Jaxon Reid. "Mr. Walsh," she began, her voice calm and professional, "we need to discuss some discrepancies in your inventory reports." "I don't know what you're talking about."
$17,000 worth of merchandise that walked out of your warehouse without being properly documented. Would you like to explain that? His face went white. Look, lady, I don't know who you are, but I'm the person Mr. Reid sent to resolve this situation. Now we can do this the easy way or the hard way. Your choice. The easy way? You return the money, submit to regular audits, and keep your job. The hard way. She let the sentence hang. What's the hard way? Avery leaned forward slightly. How attached are you to your fingers, Mr. Walsh? The casual way she said it, like she was asking about the weather, seemed to terrify him more than any dramatic threat would have. I can get the money back, he said quickly. It was just a loan, I was going to replace it. By Friday. By Friday? But Friday, or we move to the hard way. He agreed. Of course he agreed. And when Friday came, every penny was returned along with interest and a groveling apology. How did you know? Jaxon asked when she reported back. He was sitting up in bed now, color returning to his face. Know what? That threatening his fingers would work. You could have threatened his life, his family, his job. Why fingers? Because losing his life would be quick. Losing his family would be tragic. Losing his job would be inconvenient. But losing his fingers, that's permanent. Visible, a reminder every day of what happens when you cross us. And the way you said it? What about it? Like it was inevitable. Like you'd already decided and were just giving him the courtesy of knowing. I considered this. Maybe I had decided. Would you have done it if he had refused? The question hung in the air between them. A week ago, she would have said no immediately, horrified by the very suggestion. Now, I don't know, she said honestly, but I think I would have found a way to make him believe I would. That's almost worse. Is it? A person who will hurt you is dangerous. A person who will make you hurt yourself is terrifying. The next test came 3 days later. A disagreement over territory between two of Jaxon's lieutenants had escalated to the point where someone was going to get shot if it wasn't resolved. Let me handle it. This is different from a warehouse manager. These are men who have killed people. So have you, so have I, technically. When did you kill someone? I haven't yet. But I stepped in front of a gun to protect you when I was prepared to pull the trigger myself if I had to. He studied her face, and she saw something there that looked like pride mixed with concern. One of them won't respect you because you're a woman. The other won't respect you because you're pregnant. Both will try to intimidate you. Then I'll have to intimidate them first. The meeting was held in a back room at one of Jaxon's restaurants. Marcus Rivera and Tommy Chen, the lieutenants in question, sat on opposite sides of a table like school children called to the principal's office. Avery took the chair at the head of the table, her hands folded calmly in front of her. Gentlemen, we have a problem. With respect, ma'am, this is between me and Chen. Wrong. This is between both of you and Mr. Reid's ability to run his business efficiently. Your little feud is costing us money and drawing attention. That makes it my problem. Your problem? Chen leaned back in his chair. Last I checked, you weren't part of the organization. Last you checked was wrong. Something in her tone made both men sit up straighter. Avery had learned that authority wasn't about volume, it was about certainty. The way I see it, she continued, you have two choices. Resolve this conflict and get back to work. Or I'll resolve it for you. How would you resolve it? By eliminating the source of the conflict, which is both of you. The words were quiet, matter-of-fact, delivered with the same tone she might use to discuss lunch plans. Both men went very still. You'd kill us over a territory dispute? Chun asked, genuinely curious. I'd eliminate obstacles to efficient operation. What that looks like depends on how reasonable you are. She pulled out her phone and showed them a map. Here's what's going to happen. Rivera, you get the north side docks. Chen, you get the south side. The disputed area in the middle gets divided equally, with both of you taking alternate weeks. That's not, Rivera started, but I'm not finished. Her voice cut through his objection like ice. Any future disputes get brought to me first. Anyone who tries to resolve conflicts with violence instead of conversation gets replaced. Anyone who costs this organization money because of personal grudges gets fed to the lake. The silence stretched. Finally, Chen nodded. That works for me. Rivera looked like he wanted to argue, then seemed to remember who he was arguing with and thought it better. Fine. Excellent. You can work out the details with Tommy. I expect a written agreement by tomorrow. After they left, Avery sat alone in the restaurant marveling at what had just happened. She'd walked into a room full of dangerous men and made them back down, not through violence or threats, but through pure force of will. When she returned to the safe house, Jaxon was standing by the window, against doctor's orders, but moving under his own power. How did it go? He asked. They agreed to the new arrangement. Just like that? Just like that. Rivera's been with me for 5 years. He doesn't back down from anyone. He backed down from me. Why do you think that is? Avery considered the question. I think it's because I wasn't trying to prove I was stronger than him. I was simply stronger than him. And the difference is? Someone trying to prove their strength can be challenged. Someone who simply is strong can't be. Jaxon moved closer to her, his eyes bright with something that looked like fascination. You're terrifying, he said quietly. Is that bad? It's the most attractive thing I've ever seen. He kissed her then, soft and careful because of his injuries, but with an intensity that made her knees weak. What happens when you're fully recovered? She asked against his mouth. What do you mean? Do I go back to being the protected girlfriend, or do I keep being your partner? What do you want? I want to be indispensable. You already are. Not because you love me, because you need me. He pulled back to look at her. Those aren't mutually exclusive. Prove it. How? Give me real responsibility. Not tests or small problems, but actual authority in your organization. That's dangerous. I'm already in danger. At least this way I'm dangerous too. He was quiet for a long moment, and you could see him wrestling with every protective instinct he had.
There's a deal going down next week, he said finally. Import shipment from overseas. Normally, I'd handle it personally, but you're still recovering. The people we're dealing with don't know you. That could be an advantage or a disaster. What kind of people? The kind who shoot first and ask questions later. Sounds like my kind of people. His laugh was rueful. What happened to the girl who was afraid to dance in a strip club? She learned that the world is full of predators, and the only choice is whether to be prey or predator. And which did you choose? I chose to be something else entirely. What's that? I chose to be yours. Chapter 19. The Heir. The contraction started at 3 a.m. on a Tuesday in March. Avery woke to a pain that felt like her body was trying to turn itself inside out. For a moment, she lay still, thinking it might be false labor. She wasn't due for another week. Then another contraction hit, stronger than the first, and she knew. Jaxon. He was awake instantly, the way he'd trained himself to be since the attack 6 months ago. What's wrong? It's time. She'd never seen him move so fast. Within minutes, the room was full of people. Dr. Chen, the security team, Logan coordinating transportation to the private medical facility they'd prepared. Everything had been planned down to the minute, every contingency considered. Everything except how terrifying it would actually be. "I'm scared," she admitted as they helped her into the car. "Of what?" Jaxon held her hand, his own shaking slightly. "Of not being strong enough, of something going wrong, of bringing our baby into a world where people will try to hurt him." "People try to hurt everyone. We just happen to be better prepared to stop them." The medical facility was more like a fortress than a hospital. High walls, armed guards, multiple escape routes. Dr. Chen had assembled a team of specialists, the best money could buy. If anything went wrong, they'd be ready. Labor was nothing like the movies. It was messier, more painful, longer than she'd expected. Jaxon stayed with her through all of it, letting her squeeze his hand until she was probably cutting off circulation, murmuring encouragement when she wanted to give up. "I can see the head," Dr. Chen announced. "One more push." Avery bore down with everything she had, feeling like she was being split in half, and suddenly the pressure released. A moment later, the room filled with the sound of crying, angry, healthy, absolutely perfect crying. "It's a boy," Dr. Chen said, holding up a small, red, squirming bundle. "A son." Jaxon stared at the baby like he couldn't quite believe what he was seeing. When Dr. Chen placed the cleaned and wrapped infant in his arms, tears started streaming down his face. "He's perfect," he whispered. "He's beautiful," Avery agreed, reaching up to touch the baby's tiny hand. Immediately, small fingers wrapped around hers with surprising strength. "What should we call him?" Jaxon asked. Avery had been thinking about this for months. She'd expected Jaxon to want to name their son after himself, or his father, or some family tradition. Instead, he was looking at her expectantly. "I was thinking Michael, after my father." Jackson's expression softened. "Michael Reid. I like it." "You don't want to name him after your family?" "My family is you and him. That's all the tradition I need." Dr. Chen finished the medical checks. 10 fingers, 10 toes, perfect health scores across the board. Michael Reid was 7 pounds, 3 ounces of pure potential, and he was theirs. "Can I hold him?" Avery asked. When Jaxon placed their son in her arms, she felt something she'd never experienced before. Not just love she'd loved before. This was something deeper, more primitive, a fierce protectiveness that went beyond rational thought. "I would kill for him." "You won't have to." "But I would. Anyone who tries to hurt him?" "I know." "Do you think that makes me a bad person?" "I think that makes you a mother." They spent the first day in a haze of exhaustion and wonder, taking turns holding Michael, marveling at every sound he made, every expression that crossed his tiny face. Jaxon was completely smitten, talking to the baby in a soft voice Avery had never heard before. "You're going to have everything," he told Michael during a 2 a.m. feeding. "Everything I never had. Safety, love, choices. You'll never have to be afraid." "What if he wants to follow in your footsteps?" "Then I'll teach him to be better at it than I am." "And if he wants nothing to do with this life?" "Then I'll give him whatever life he does want." "Even if it means walking away from all this?"
Jaxon looked around the secure facility, at the guards outside their door, at the empire he'd built that had brought them together and nearly gotten them killed. If that's what makes him happy, yes. Do you mean that? I mean it. This was never supposed to be forever. It was supposed to be until I found something worth more than power. And have you? He looked at her holding their son, both of them safe and healthy in his. Yes. The attack came on their third day. Avery was nursing Michael when the lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in immediately, bathing everything in red, and she heard Logan's voice over the intercom. Lockdown. We have multiple contacts, armed, moving on the facility. How many? Jaxon was already moving, checking his weapon, shifting into the cold professional she'd first met. At least 8, maybe more. Who? Unknown, but they're well-equipped and they know the layout. Another inside job. Someone had given their enemies detailed information about the facility, the security protocols, maybe even which room they were in. Safe room. Now. The safe room was exactly what it sounded like. Reinforced walls, independent air supply, enough food and water for a week. It was also the most defensible position in the building. They made it halfway down the corridor when the shooting started. Gunfire echoed through the medical facility, followed by shouts and the sound of running feet. Their escorts, 4 of Jaxon's best men, formed a protective circle around them as they moved. "They're in the building," one of them reported. "East and west entrances breached." "How long until backup arrives?" 20 minutes. Too long. Avery clutched Michael to her chest, feeling his tiny body tense at the sound of violence. He wasn't crying. Somehow, impossibly, he seemed to sense the need for quiet. They reached the safe room door when the first attacker appeared at the end of the hall. He was young, professional, armed with military-grade weapons. When he saw them, he raised his rifle. One of their escorts went down immediately, then another. "Get them inside!" Logan shouted, but the door mechanism was electronic and the power was out. Manual override would take time they didn't have. Avery found herself pressed against the wall, holding Michael, watching men die to protect them. Jaxon was returning fire, but they were outnumbered. Through the chaos, she saw another figure moving through the smoke. Older, more careful, with a sniper's rifle instead of an automatic weapon. He was positioning himself for a clear shot at Jaxon. Time slowed. She saw the rifle barrel swinging toward the man she loved, saw the careful aim, the professional calm of a killer doing his job, saw the moment when she was about to be a widow and her son was about to lose his father. Her hand found the gun Jaxon had insisted she carry, even in the medical facility. She'd practiced with it hundreds of times over the past months, but always at targets, never at people. This was different. She shifted Michael to her left arm, drew the gun with her right, and fired 3 times in succession. All 3 shots hit center mass. The sniper dropped without a sound. The sudden silence was deafening. Everyone in the hallway, attackers and defenders alike, turned to stare at her. A woman in a hospital gown, holding a 3-day-old baby, smoke still rising from her gun. "Anyone else?" she asked quietly. The remaining attackers looked at each other, then at their dead colleague, and at the woman who'd killed him without hesitation or remorse. Whatever they'd been paid, it wasn't enough for this. They retreated. Logan finally got the safe room door open and they secured themselves inside. Michael had slept through the entire firefight, apparently unbothered by his mother's transformation into a killer. "You shot him," Jaxon said, still staring at her. "Yes." "You killed him." "Yes." "How do you feel?" Avery considered the question. She'd just taken a human life. She should feel sick, guilty, traumatized. Instead, she felt satisfied, she answered honestly. Why? Because he was going to hurt you, hurt our family, and now he can't. Jaxon moved closer to her, his expression unreadable. You've changed. We all change. Not like this. This is permanent. Good. Good? I'm tired of being someone who needs protection. I want to be someone who provides it. Even if it means killing people? Especially if it means killing people who threaten our son. She looked down at Michael, still sleeping peacefully in her arms. He was perfect, innocent, completely dependent on them for safety. In that moment, she understood something about herself that she'd never fully grasped before.
She wasn't just capable of violence to protect her family, she was eager for it. I love you, Jaxon said quietly. I love you too. Even knowing what we've both become, especially knowing what we've become. Outside the safe room, Chicago police were finally arriving, sirens wailing in the distance. Soon there would be questions, investigations, paperwork. But that was tomorrow's problem. Tonight, their family was safe. Tonight, she was exactly who she needed to be. Welcome to the world, Michael, she whispered to their sleeping son. Your parents are criminals, killers, and completely devoted to making sure nothing ever hurts you. The baby stirred slightly, as if he understood and approved. Maybe he did. Maybe he was already learning that in their world, love and violence weren't opposites. They were the same thing. Chapter 20. Her Choice. 6 months after Michael's birth, the war was over. Vincent Maddox's organization had been dismantled piece by piece, its remaining members either dead, imprisoned, or smart enough to disappear permanently. The nephew who'd led the attack on the medical facility had been found floating in the Chicago River 3 days later, a message that resonated throughout the criminal underworld. No one touched the Reid family and lived to regret it. Avery stood at the window of their new penthouse, watching Michael play on a blanket spread across the living room floor. At 6 months old, he was already showing signs of his father's intensity. Dark eyes that seemed to take in everything, a calm alertness that suggested he understood more than he should. He's going to be trouble, she said as Jaxon joined her at the window. He comes by it honestly. The penthouse was their third home since Michael's birth. Each move had been an upgrade in security and comfort, but Avery wondered sometimes if they were building a fortress or a prison. The line between protection and isolation had blurred until she couldn't see it anymore. Tommy called. The shipment from Amsterdam arrived on schedule. No problems. And the territory dispute on the south side? Resolved. Turns out a little fear goes a long way toward maintaining peace. Their empire had stabilized in the aftermath of the war. Rivals had been eliminated or absorbed. Territories clearly defined, operations running smoothly. For the first time since she'd known him, Jaxon seemed peaceful. I have something for you, he said, pulling a manila envelope from his jacket. What is it? Open it. Inside were legal documents, thick, official, intimidating. She scanned the first page, then the second, her eyes widening as she understood what she was looking at. These are transfer documents for everything. The businesses, the accounts, the properties, all of it. She stared at him. You're giving me your empire? I'm giving you the choice to take it or leave it. I don't understand. The original contract expired when Michael was born. Legally, you're free to go. You have been for months. I know that.
But I wanted to make sure you knew it, really knew it. He took the documents from her hands. These represent everything I've built over the past 15 years. Sign them, and it's all yours. Don't sign them, and walk away with enough money to disappear anywhere in the world. Avery felt a something cold settle in her stomach. You want me to leave? I want you to choose. Really choose. For the first time since we met. I chose months ago. I chose you. You chose to stay with me because it was the best option available. Because leaving would have been dangerous, complicated, maybe impossible. He moved to the couch where Michael was playing, picking up their son with practiced ease. Now, it's not. Now, you have real choices. What brought this on? Yesterday, when you were meeting with the Harbor Authority about the shipping contracts, I watched you handle those men, intimidate them, manipulate them, and get exactly what you wanted. You were magnificent. Thank you? And I realized that you've become everything I never wanted for you. The words hit her like ice water. What's that supposed to mean? I wanted to protect your innocence, keep you separate from the worst parts of this world, give you love without corruption, safety without compromise. He looked down at Michael, who was trying to grab his father's face with tiny hands. Instead, I turned you into someone like me. Someone like you? Someone who kills without hesitation. Someone who uses fear as a tool. Someone who looks at a room full of people and automatically calculates which ones are threats. Is that what you see when you look at me? I see the most dangerous woman in Chicago. I see someone who could run this organization better than I ever have. I see someone who's forgotten what it feels like to be innocent. Avery was quiet for a long moment, processing what he'd said. And that disappoints you? It terrifies me. Why? Because I'm not sure if you chose to become this person or if I made you into this person. Does it matter? It matters to me. She moved to the bar and poured herself a drink. Whiskey. Neat. The way he taught her. When had she started drinking whiskey? When had she started liking the burn? You want to know the truth? Always. I didn't choose to become this person. You're right about that. The circumstances chose for me. The world chose for me. The threats to our family chose for me. That's what I was afraid of. But I'm glad they did. He looked up at her, surprised. I like who I've become, Jaxon. I like being strong instead of weak. I like being feared instead of dismissed. I like knowing that when someone threatens what I love, I have the power to stop them. Even if that means you're not the woman you used to be? Especially if it means I'm not the woman I used to be. She moved closer to him, close enough to see the conflict in his eyes. That woman was a victim. She let people use her, betray her, leave her with nothing. She would have died in poverty while her mother died in a hospital bed. That woman was innocent. That woman was useless. The harsh word hung in the air between them. Jaxon flinched like he'd slapped her. She wasn't useless. She was kind, trusting, hopeful. She was weak, and weakness gets you killed in this world. Not everyone has to live in this world. No, but I do. We do. Michael does. She sat down beside him, close enough to see the conflict in his eyes. I'm not that desperate girl anymore, and I don't want to be. I want to be someone who protects instead of someone who needs protection. What if I told you you could leave? Take Michael, go anywhere in the world, live any life you wanted. I'd ask you why you want to get rid of me. I don't want to get rid of you. I want to know that you're here because you want to be, not because you have to be. And if I choose to stay, then we build something together, really together, as equals. And if I choose to leave? His expression tightened with pain, but his voice stayed steady. Then I'll miss you for the rest of my life, but I'll know you're safe and happy. You'd let me take Michael? Michael should be with his mother. Even if it means you never see him again? Even then. The sacrifice implicit in his words took my breath away. I'd seen him kill for less than what he was offering to give up. You love us that much? I love you that much. Enough to let us go? Enough to let you choose. Avery looked around the penthouse, beautiful, expensive, heavily secured. Through the windows, Chicago hummed with life and possibility. Their city, their empire, their kingdom to rule together. The desperate girl who'd signed a contract for money was gone forever. In her place stood a queen. And queens, Avery had learned, didn't need to be saved. They did the saving themselves. I have a question. What? If I stay, if I take over parts of the organization, if I become your partner in everything, will you resent me for it? Why would I resent you? Because I'll be competition. Because I might be better at this than you are. Because I might want things you don't want, or disagree with your methods, or challenge your authority. I hope you do all of those things. But why? Because this organization needs someone who thinks differently than I do. Someone who sees opportunities I miss, solutions I can't imagine. He shifted Michael to his other arm. Someone who's not limited by how things have always been done. And you're comfortable with that? I'm aroused by that. Despite everything, she laughed. Aroused? Power is the ultimate aphrodisiac. And you?
Wielding real power, making hard decisions, commanding respect and fear. He leaned closer to her. It's the sexiest thing I've ever imagined. Even if it means you're not the only one in charge anymore, especially if it means that. She was quiet for a moment, watching Michael try to grab the light filtering through the windows. Their son, beautiful, innocent, completely dependent on them to shape the world he'd grow up in. If I stay, she said finally, it's not because of the contract. It's not because I owe you anything or because I'm afraid to leave. I know. It's because this is who I am now. This is the life I want, the world I want to help build, the future I want for our son. I know. And if you ever try to control me again, if you ever make decisions about my life without consulting me, if you ever treat me like property instead of a partner, you'll leave. I'll destroy you. The words were quiet, matter-of-fact, completely sincere. Jaxon stared at her for a moment, then smiled. The first genuinely happy smile he's seen from him in weeks. Now I'm definitely aroused. Good. Because you're about to find out what it's like to be owned instead of owning. Is that a threat? It's a promise. She moved closer to him, close enough to see her reflection in his dark eyes. I was never really yours, was I? Not from the beginning. What do you mean? The contract, the arrangement, all of it. I was playing a role. The desperate girl, the grateful lover, the protected girlfriend. But that wasn't really me. Who were you? I was someone waiting to become who I am now. And who are you now? She smiled, and it was sharp enough to cut.
Now, I think you might be mine." When she kissed him, it tasted like victory and promise and the future they were about to build together. Michael laughed from his father's arms, a sound of pure joy that filled the penthouse and their hearts. Outside the windows, Chicago hummed with life and possibility. Their city, their empire, their kingdom to rule together. The desperate girl who signed a contract for money was gone forever. In her place stood a queen. And queens, Avery had learned, didn't need to be saved. They did the saving themselves.